Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Marvel. Reborn is a magic book, and you will get it back 10,000 times returns. Chapter 41. In the Mirror Dimension. The battle continues. Definitely, to a certain extent, this is not a battle. The king was just tied up with a pile of wood. The wood is still being strangled. It's just that the king's body is too powerful, and these woods, which can twist steel, seem somewhat powerless in front of the king. It was constantly squirming, but it did not pose any threat to the king at all. On the contrary, because the king's body was too strong, the wood actually had some signs of splintering. As a spellcaster, Qianhe's face turned red from holding back. "All right, you did a good enough job. It's just that you're not strong enough now," Wang said calmly. The muscles on his body exploded with powerful strength. Crunch, crunch. A harsh sound sounded, and the wood surrounding the king did not limit the king's ability at all. It exploded directly into a sky full of sawdust. Hamel and Qianhe both looked at Wang with shock. "What kind of body is this? It's easy to crush this attack. Aren't you easily able to break free from any magical restraints?" Hamel was shocked. "What kind of body is this? When did Wang's body become so strong? Not human at all. It's not a big deal. Let's take a look at this kid." Wang waved his hand. He practices flowing rock-shattering fist, and it is normal for him to be physically strong. There is nothing surprising about this. What interests him is money and power. This power called wood release looks the same as magic. Ability to manipulate forces in nature. But the two are different. Wood escape only uses a part of the natural energy, and the most important force is the power inside the body. Magic is all controlled by magical power. Compared to magic, this power seems to be stronger, it can even be said to be much stronger. What an interesting power. Through energy, we use the power of weak plants to exert terrifying power. Unheard, unseen. The king's eyes lit up. With ordinary plants, they exert a power comparable to magic. This is very amazing. Before, he had never thought that there was such a method in the world. But I think the ability you have mastered should be more than just this, right? Logically speaking, the magic book should provide a certain system. You should have mastered a lot of power, but you are limited by your own strength and cannot use it. Now try to show your strength. Wang casually threw away the wood on his body. In his hands, the hard wood had turned into chips. Qianhe looked dumbfounded. "You're right, but does it make sense to you?" Qianhe couldn't help but sweat. This person is simply a human heart demon. His body is more powerful than his magical weapon, and his wood release seems to be completely ineffective. "Your wood release is indeed useless to me. I just want to see your power, maybe it will inspire you. Come on without further ado. There are not many opportunities for sparring with big magicians. Besides, this should be good for you," Wang said with a smile. "You're right. Since you have no objection, I have no objection either." Qianhe could only hand over helplessly. "Then I'll be offended again." Qianhe also got angry. He has received the inheritance of the magic book, and he can't even hurt the magician. This is really a shock to Qianhe. He wants to prove his strength and his worth. Only then can you legitimately become an official magician, and then become a superhero. Qianhe took a deep breath. The chakra that had been calm became restless again. His eyes were shining with light green light. Next moment, Qian begins to make seals constantly. Complex handprints constantly appeared in his hands, and even after images appeared. "Wooden escape. Tree-bound eternal burial," Qian Hegao shouted and slapped the ground directly. Wood escape is a kind of blood inheritance limit, which is a compound spell of earth and water chakra. Qianhe has only initially mastered this kind of power, so it's a bit conceding when using it. He must be in contact with the ground to exert the strongest power. He slapped the ground, and mysterious power spread out from the center of his palm. Wang frowned. Suddenly, he discovered that at some point, several vines were wrapped around his body. He didn't have time to react. These vines began to thicken rapidly, and then expanded and grew rapidly as if mutating. These trees grow very quickly. In the blink of an eye, they grow into a towering tree more than 10 meters high. Even the thickness seems to be more than 1 meter thick. Below are dense roots, and the king is trapped among these roots. A whole big tree suppresses it. He could even feel the pressure on his body from the surrounding trees and soil. This kind of pressure is several times stronger than the previous strangulation. If it were a magician with poor physical fitness, he would probably be turned into a mess. This power is so terrifying. Wang couldn't help but move his body. But I found that his activities were somewhat restricted. He even needed to exert 50% of his strength to break free from the shackles of the trees. At that time, Wang's eyes were full of shock. How strong is he now? He can smash an ordinary magician's magic shield with one punch. It can be said that his body has completely reached the monster level. Even without using breathing techniques, you can defeat most magicians. This is ultimate power. But even with this kind of power, it actually took half of the effort to break the shackles of the trees. This wood release is really a bit scary to know. Qian He is just a little magician at the elementary level. If it were other small magician attacks, he wouldn't understand them even if he stood still. It is no exaggeration to say that he can even kill an ordinary little magician with a single punch. Now, Qian He was able to force him to use half of his strength. How incredible is this? The weaker Qian He is, the more he can reflect the abnormality of Mu Dun. It also made Wang more aware of the horror of the magic book. The ability to teach magicians is incredible and unbelievable. And it's very powerful. He simply couldn't imagine where this power came from. Over here, Lin Yu also expressed the same emotion. The system is really too perverted. It's just an elementary level ninjutsu, but it can exert such powerful power. He admitted that he underestimated the power of Mu Dun. To know, among the wooden escapes, the really powerful ones are the ninjutsu of Senju Hashirama, and even the strongest power can be unleashed by activating the Sage Mode. This is a world away from today's money. This can be seen just from the elementary level wood escape ninjutsu mastered by Kion. He really gained an incredible power. Wood escape is a powerful blood inheritance boundary. Senju Hashirama can even suppress Madara Uchiha by relying on wood release. This shows how powerful this wood release is. Lin Yu naturally knows this. He just didn't expect that the power of this wood escape was beyond his imagination. The reason why Qian He failed to defeat the Defense King was not because Mu Dun was weak. It's because Wang is too strong. The king who has mastered the flowing rock shattering fist has a body 10,000 times stronger than steel. Even the powerful magic in Kamar Taj cannot pose any threat to his body. That was magic formed with the help of powerful beings in the Marvel world, which shows how terrifying the strength of the king's body is. Qian He trapped Wang with his wooden escape, which was already very terrifying. It's just that the difference in strength is too big. Lin Yu saw that Hamel's face was full of shock. Naturally, everyone in the mirror dimension didn't know that Lin Yu was watching them. They were talking to themselves. How does the king feel? The strength of this thing should be very terrifying, right? Hamel was shocked for a moment, and then asked me enthusiastically. I want to know what it feels like to be trapped by Mu Dun. The intensity is amazing. I'm afraid I need 50% of my strength to break free. Wang said very seriously. 50% strength. That's not very strong, is it? Hamel raised his eyebrows and said. Not very strong. Wang curled his lips and smiled. In his body, the power belonging to the Liushaoyan shattering fist breathing method constantly flows through his body. The strength of his whole body was condensed into one, and the muscles all over his body were like steel. Crunch, crunch, a shrill sound constantly sounded. The original king was trapped beneath the ground. At this moment, the ground was rising high, and the tree roots that bound him kept making teeth-searing sounds. Ha! Wang shouted loudly. The extremely terrifying power burst out instantly. Boom! The ground suddenly exploded. Both the trees and the ground that trapped the king were exploded, and a large number of rocks flew directly into the sky. Hamel was shocked. Now do you still think that my 50% strength is very little? Wang said calmly. Hamel shook his head violently. Your body doesn't look like a human being at all. It looks like a beast. I'm afraid I can fight the hell demon in hand-to-hand combat. Are the contents of the magic book so perverted? Even your power is so amazing. Hamel said with a wry smile on his face. Wang nodded. You're right. The power of the magic book is indeed very terrifying. The power inherited so far is very terrifying. The amount of my practice is like this, and this kid's would escape training is also like this. Hamel's face was full of emotion. It's hard to imagine who could create such a miracle. Countless mysterious inheritances are more powerful and long-term than magic. Hamel couldn't help but sigh. The magician is right. I never imagined that there would be such power. I thought magic was profound enough. He also smiled bitterly. His magic ability is not very good, and most of the magic is considered advanced in his eyes. But Dun is even more terrifying. The principle is very mysterious. If it weren't for the magic book infusion, he would never have been able to learn it. It was also difficult for him to imagine the origin of magic. After hearing He's words, the three of them looked at each other with complicated expressions. However, you kid is lucky to be so young when you got the magic book. There's still a long life left to study. Compared to us old guys, you have a lot of advantages. Hamel looked at He and couldn't help feeling a little emotional. Master Hamel, you are still strong. Age shouldn't be an issue for you. Practice magic to extend your life, right? He smiled and said. That's different from you too. Hamel shook his head. He has lived too long to see through it. Okay, no need to say these weird words. We, Kamar Taj, have another junior who has made great achievements. This is a good thing. If you continue to practice this would escape power, your future will be limitless. As long as this kid consolidates his strength, most senior magicians will no longer be his opponents. Wang also sighed with emotion. Indeed, the power inherited from this magic book is too amazing, and the initial progress has been huge. Except for you, the other magicians among Kamar Taj who have obtained the power of the magic book are much stronger than before. Wang was a little disbelieving when he saw Hamel, so he spoke again. Oh, it seems that a lot of things happened during my practice of magic that I don't know about. Interesting, so interesting. I would like to see what kind of power they have, and if it can be combined with magic, whether they can exert special abilities. Hamel's eyes couldn't help but shine. As the magician with the deepest knowledge of magic within Kamar Taj, his research on all kinds of magic is quite thorough. But, unlike most seniors, Hamel never rests on his laurels. Creating new magic is his favorite thing. Seeing the astonishing power of Dun, what he now wants to do is to combine the two powers to see if he can create magic that can exert new power. If there are other different powers, that would be better. You're still the same, but I'll lend it to you later, Wang said to Hamel. Then he turned around and asked He. Boy, are you willing to practice with me? Although I can't give you anything about this so-called wood release, I can give you combat experience. This is also quite important. Wang's tone was very serious and he looked very serious. When He heard this, he felt a little flattered. This is a big magician. For ordinary magicians like them, the great magician is a legend. Each of them has a very high reputation among Kamar Taj. Being able to become a disciple of the great magician was something he never dared to think about before. Unexpectedly, I got an active invitation from the big magician now. Magician, I do. Money and decisive agreement. He is a very smart magician. He knew very well that even if he gained this amazing ability, he would not necessarily become a master. Masters can only be produced after continuous training in endless battles. Being able to become a disciple of a great magician was very helpful to him. Very good. Wang nodded with satisfaction. Hamel next to him shook his head. Why didn't he think of that? If he has a disciple, it will be much easier for him to study in the future. In the library, Lin Yu couldn't help but click her tongue when she saw this scene. The magic book is indeed perverted. Just leaking something can change a person's life. Wang planned to treat He as his apprentice and teach him carefully. He didn't make much of a secret about it. He directly informed other magicians of these situations, especially Kamar Taj and several of the big magicians at his level, such as Mordo, Caecilius, etc. He has notified them. In fact, there is no intention, just for convenience. If there is a chance in the future, let others take care of you. But he didn't know that his behavior attracted the attention of two great magicians. Not someone else. It was two brothers, Mordo and Caecilius. These two brothers are both disciples of the Ancient One. Even though they usually don't get along with each other, sometimes they are very similar and have quite the same views on many things. Therefore, they often get together to discuss things. This time Wang suddenly accepted a disciple, and both of them were very surprised. In their eyes, Wang was dull and honest. He spent most of his time practicing on his own and could hardly care about others, let alone accepting a disciple. What's happening here? I feel a little weird. How come this guy Wang accepted a disciple so quietly that he didn't even hear the slightest news? Modu said a little doubtfully. Taking on a disciple is not a big deal. But they hadn't heard anything at all before, which was a bit weird. Moreover, the person who was accepted was a little-known magician who was previously in charge of logistics. Although everyone in Kamar Taj seems to be equal, what humans are best at is classifying people into different ranks. Not to mention that in essence, the contribution made by the logistics staff cannot be compared with that of the hardworking magician. So the status of the two is completely different. It would not be incomprehensible if Wang found a fighting magician as his apprentice. The king was originally a magician among Kamar Taj who specialized in fighting, and his combat prowess was obvious to all. With this kind of status and this kind of means, no one would say anything about finding a senior magician as his apprentice. In the end, I found a little-known magician who worked in logistics. It's really hard to understand. Compared to Mordo's confusion, Caecilius' face turned dark. The king is just honest, he is not stupid. Of course there are reasons for accepting such a disciple. Modu raised his eyebrows and asked, "Do you know the reason? Why did he suddenly accept such a disciple?" It's definitely because his disciple is unusual. This lucky guy also received the gift of a magic book. When Caecilius said this, his fists were clenched tightly, which showed that he was in a very uneasy mood. Modu's pupils shrank, and his mood became extremely complicated. The two of them, as the great magicians of Kamar Taj, are the most outstanding people in the entire Kamar Taj. Mordo thought, in all of Kamar Taj, these two are the two most qualified to receive the inheritance of the grimoire. But, no matter how much they look for it, no matter how many times they go to the library, none of them discovered this so-called magic book. In order to qualify, he even used Kamar Taj's supreme artifact, the Eye of Agamotto. Even so, he still couldn't find any trace. An ordinary logistics magician, responsible for taking care of plants, actually got the qualification. Modu felt that this world was really ridiculous. Although his heart was not calm, he finally adjusted it. As he is over 50 years old, he has long known that the world is inherently unfair and that it is not impossible for this kind of thing to happen. But, Caecilius in front of him was a little hard to accept. As everyone knows, arrogant people are prone to extremes. Caecilius is that very arrogant guy. Now that he sees that a magician who works in logistics can be recognized by the magic book, he is naturally very unhappy. Why, am I not good? Why can't I get this power? Why, this power should be mine. Caecilius even felt a little twisted in his heart. His fists were clenched so tightly that his nails seemed to be digging into his flesh. Mordo clearly saw something strange about Caecilius. But he didn't mean to explain this fellow apprentice at all, but instead added fuel to the fire. It's really unfair. We great magicians have such outstanding abilities, but they are not as good as an ordinary magician. Maybe the magic book just doesn't recognize us. It seems that our ability is not that good. Hearing this, Caecilius pressed his hands harder. He looked at Modu, his eyes full of gloom. I'm different from you. I will definitely be recognized. I will definitely get the power in the magic book. Even if I can't get it, I will still find great power. Caecilius's voice was extremely gloomy. After looking at Modu, he stood up from his seat, shook his robe, and turned to leave. Looking at its direction, it is the library. Mordo looked at Caecilius leaving, with no expression on his face. His eyes were full of amusement. In the library, Lin Yu checks the magicians around him every day. Let's see if it's possible for an existence that is recognized by the system to suddenly appear. Unfortunately, after looking around, no magician can cause fluctuations in the magic book. What a bunch of crooked melons and cracked jujubes. Why can't any of them be good? In this way, I can have a body anytime. I have so much power, but I can't use it. It's so boring. Lin Yu was a little angry. His power is very powerful. After receiving many returns, his current strength is much stronger than the generals in the One Piece world. If he attacks with all his strength, he can easily destroy a large city. It can be said, it's a walking nuclear weapon. It's just that he doesn't have a body now, so these powers are naturally greatly weakened. As a magic book, you can't fight with these classics in a library, right? Lin Yu was a little helpless and could only hope that when the number of people was enough, he would have a human body. Otherwise, this life would be really boring. Lin Yu, who was bored, spread out his mysterious power and instantly enveloped Kamar Taj, wanting to see what was interesting. Why is this guy so angry? Are you still here for the library? Lin Yu made a surprised sound. He looked over and saw that the man was none other than Caecilius. Caecilius is also a big magician to some extent. Even though he is arrogant, he has no lack of normalcy. Otherwise he wouldn't be able to become a great magician. But now, why does Caecilius look a little angry? Could it be that someone provoked him? Lin Yu immediately found it interesting. This is Kamar Taj No. 125. The Ancient One is still alive and dares to rebel against Kamar Taj's men. He wanted to see what this guy was going to do. Kamar Taj, library. It was noon, and most magicians had already left the library. Among them, only the librarian is still guarding the books. The senior magician was about to put the books back in their place. I felt that there was an extra person in front of me. Looking up, he saw none other than Caecilius. But compared to Caecilius, who usually has a great magician demeanor, at this moment, Caecilius' whole body exuded a low aura that kept strangers away. The big magician, the librarian saluted quickly. But Caecilius didn't respond to him, and went straight into the library without even looking at him. The librarian scratched his head, wondering who had offended this disciple of the powerful magician Ancient One. He didn't know. The person who angered Caecilius was none other than Caecilius himself. Caecilius has always been proud of his ability. On the road of practicing magic, he is also far ahead of other magicians. Unfortunately, in the world of Marvel, everything is destined. Just because you have ability doesn't mean you can achieve enough. What you need is good luck. After becoming a great magician, Caecilius found that his practice speed had become slower. It only took him less than 10 years to become a great magician, but it has been more than 30 years since he became a great magician, but he has not made any huge amounts of progress. Although this is true for most big magicians. For example, Hamel is nearly 70 years old, but his combat effectiveness is still the weakest magician among Kamar Taj. Caecilius couldn't accept it at all. Especially in recent years, there have been more and more rising stars in Kamar Taj, and Caecilius also feels very urgent. The changes in Caecilius did not happen overnight, but were accumulated over the years. And the emergence of magic books. It was the last straw that broke his back. I saw those magicians who were growing extremely fast, and I saw the king who was originally inferior to me suddenly become so powerful. Fear appeared in the bottom of his heart. If he continues like this, let alone being surpassed by the king, even if he is surpassed by those ordinary little magicians, it may not be impossible. The appearance of Qian He became the last straw for Caecilius. For him, obtaining stronger power has become a necessity. To put it bluntly, Caecilius is over the top. Entering the library, Caecilius glanced around with a sinister look. Caecilius directly unleashed his powerful mental power without any scruples. Like substantial mental power, it even caused transparent ripples to appear in the surrounding air. Come out. As long as you give me strength, I will promise you anything. His wild mental power exposed his inner thoughts. Pity. No one paid any attention to him. Lin Yu had no interest in dealing with such a young man, let alone how could he deal with him when the system didn't respond at all. Caecilius could only be there for his own almighty rage. Just like that, Caecilius searched vigorously for half an hour, but still couldn't find any trace of the cobweb horse. I swear, one day I will tear you apart. Seeing no response at all, Caecilius felt extremely angry. His eyes were full of anger. Even a simple little magician, or even a magician tending plants, can gain this powerful power. Why can't he? I can become a strong person without you. I can still walk the high road. Caecilius' eyes were very fierce, staring directly at the books bound by iron chains in the library. These are the works of the Ancient One, and they are also among the few books by Kamar Taj that have a threshold for viewing. The contents are so obscure that most magicians cannot read them. Of course, Caecilius was not included. He knows. Magic is also a powerful path. If you go far enough, you can become a powerful being. The Ancient One is one of them, the most powerful magician on earth. She possesses unimaginable power, and in these books, there is the secret of magic. But if you take shortcuts, there will definitely be problems. If you increase your strength in a short period of time, there will definitely be a lot of trouble. Caecilius had not used this method before. Now he no longer cares about so much. Caecilius's eyes kept changing, and finally turned firm. Stepping forward, he untied the chains covering the ancient magic book and took down the very ancient-looking book. Next, there was only the quiet sound of turning books in the library. Caecilius looked at the book, but his expression was not that ugly. This magic book is clumsy and difficult to understand. The magical content in it was a bit difficult to read even for a big magician like him. Naturally, there are not many things that can work. Caecilius couldn't help but frown. Could it be that there is no way out in this magic book? Caecilius did not believe in evil and continued to read the book. Hard work pays off. Soon, he found what he was looking for. Dark space, Dormammu, the endless power of darkness. Caecilius muttered. His eyes gradually became excited. Reading these books also became more and more fascinating. He didn't notice. As he read, waves of almost invisible dark aura appeared around him. Caecilius's body even began to change. Only, this change is not obvious, and it is difficult to detect it without careful observation. The same goes for those dark forces. They constantly enter Caecilius' body from unknown dimensions. This process is very secretive and difficult to detect at all. In all of Kamar Taj, only one person sensed something was wrong. This person is none other than Lin Yu. I really didn't expect that this guy fell into darkness like this. The pursuit of power completely blinded him. Lin Yu shook his head regretfully. Character determines destiny. The moment Caecilius's family passed away, it was destined that Caecilius' future would be a tragedy. His endless thirst for power has made him completely disregard the consequences. But what does this have to do with me? I'm just a magic book. Perhaps I can deliver the news in advance and fool these people a little more. There are not enough magicians in Kamar Taj. Let these guys find more people when the time comes. Lin Yu thought carefully in his mind. He could use this as an opportunity. Reveal some information to the magicians in advance and fool these people. Isn't it beautiful? Dark corruption does not take effect in a day or two. If it weren't for Lin Yu's keen senses and powerful system, maybe he still couldn't detect the dark aura around Caecilius. He found it so difficult. Not to mention everyone else. Lin Yu felt that he needed to remind this magician. Increase his prestige. Anyway, every day is idle, so why not find something to do for yourself? This bunch of Kamar Taj magicians are also the kind of people who don't let go of the hawk before they see the rabbit. Even if he believed his deception, not a single magician has been sent to him so far. He almost vomited at the magicians in Kamar Taj's headquarters, but he couldn't find any qualified ones. Is it because my hints were not in place? Forget it about a little guy like Luke. Why is a big magician like Wang so ignorant? Lin Yu couldn't help but think in his heart. Just take this opportunity to improve my status. Otherwise, it would be so sad if no one listens. Although Lin Yu is very salty. But I still have dreams in my heart. He felt this was a good opportunity. Anyway, Caecilius is just a young boy, and he doesn't care whether he lives or lives, so it would be nice to be used by him before he dies. He becomes the magician who saves Kamar Taj. Caecilius had no idea that there were still people observing him in the library. He read the forbidden knowledge obsessively without caring about the consequences. Power truly knows no good or evil. Darkness and light are just natural phenomena in nature. It's just that when the darkness has a master, it's completely different. Caecilius understood not the knowledge of darkness, but the knowledge of Dormammu. If he was as strong and mentally tough as the Ancient One, maybe there would be no problem. The Ancient One relies on the power of the dark space to maintain its life, and has not fallen into darkness after so many years. Instead, she has always been her sorcerer supreme, protecting the earth. It's a pity that although Caecilius is proud and arrogant, he has no ability to speak. The reason why Ancient One prohibits magicians from accessing the corresponding knowledge is because they are afraid that ordinary magicians will not be able to handle the temptation. Now her worst fear has happened. Caecilius was completely addicted to it, and his power was slowly growing. This is the real power, I can feel that I am becoming stronger. I want more. Caecilius's voice became very fervent. But his connection with the black dark space is still short, and the dark erosion is not yet that deep. Caecilius is still able to maintain his sanity. Feeling that his strength was slowing down, he put down the tome in his hand and returned it to its original position. Even if there is no so-called magic book, I can still become blessed and become the greatest magician in the world. I will have endless power. Caecilius left the library with bright eyes. There was something strange about him, but no one could notice it at all. Tisk, Dormammu is quite smart. I know how to give you a little sweetness first and collect the payment slowly. There are means. Lin Yu watched from the side and guessed Dormammu's thoughts closely. Dormammu can indeed infuse powerful power in one go. It's just that this becomes a one-time deal, and it's not as big as the benefits brought by a steady flow of money. Time passes, Caecilius fools a few more magicians, and Dormammu breaks through Kamar Taj, which becomes even easier. But Lin Yu didn't mean to expose it either. If the holy place of the earth is not broken, Dormammu will not be able to come to the earth at all. Everything is under control. That's all. Soon half a month has passed. Caecilius comes to the library every day to receive the infusion of dark power. At this moment, he has basically lost his magician sanity. I even began to think from my heart that dark power is beautiful and powerful. For this reason, he even called some of his die-hard fans over to accept the inheritance of these powerful dark forces. Under this situation, the power of darkness that Caecilius endured reached its limit, and many external characteristics even appeared. His darkening eyes were proof of that. Although it looks like dark circles, you can't usually see any difference, but if you look carefully, you can still find something wrong. It's time. It's worth waiting so long. Lin Yu looked at Caecilius, whose aura had become clearer, and nodded with satisfaction. This guy is the big magician of Kamar Taj. Before doing anything harmful, no one can overthrow him except the Ancient One himself. Even in the movie, the hunt for Caecilius begins after he hangs the librarian from the rafters of the library. And before that, can no one find anything wrong with such a big Kamar Taj? Naturally, it is impossible. It's just that Caecilius is a disciple of the Ancient One and a great magician, so ordinary magicians can't speak. Now Lin Yu is giving them a chance to find something wrong. Seizing the evidence that Caecilius used the power of darkness, he had no way to argue. Lin Yu has been waiting patiently for Caecilius to put down his books and leave the library as usual. He then used his spiritual power to notify the king who was practicing in the mirror dimension. Soon, Wang directly opened a portal and rushed out from the mirror dimension. What do you want from me? Lin Yu cleared her throat and spoke in a pretentious manner. I see the future of Kamar Taj, shrouded in darkness. Something bad is about to happen in Kamar Taj. If this thing really happens, I'm afraid the entire earth will be at risk of destruction. What? The king was shocked. As his research on Lius Houyan's shattering fist and his strength increased, he became more and more convinced of Lin Yu's words. At least the power given by Lin Yu cannot be faked at all. He was naturally very surprised when he heard Lin Yu's words and asked anxiously. Excuse me, what happened? Why is there such a terrible danger? Lin Yu mobilized his mental strength to look at Wang. Although he did not face him head-on, Wang still felt a sense of oppression of huge amounts. Some of you magicians accepted the power of the dark space and fell into it. If this continues, the entire earth will be swallowed up by dark space. Lin Yu's deep voice sounded. This is impossible. There is no way the great magicians will betray Kamar Taj. Wang said decisively. The magicians of Kamar Taj are not all men of light. Lin Yu snorted and said. It was fine when Ancient One was alive, but after Ancient One passed away, Kamar Taj became worse day by day. The troubles Strange caused were no less than those of the villains. I don't know where Wang got the confidence to say such things. Under the leadership of the Ancient One, the atmosphere of Kamar Taj is still very good. Although there are still some conflicts between the magicians, they are also very friendly and have no major problems. Therefore, the king was in disbelief that anyone would betray Kamar Taj and accept the dark calendar. Especially the big magician level. What do they want? Wang Bai was puzzled. Lin Yu looked at Wang with doubts on his face and couldn't help but shake his head. The king is still honest and honest. I simply don't understand how selfish these people are. Not to mention someone like Wang who takes the initiative to help others. Whenever they see others helping others, they will say something like, "Holy Mother." Although Lin Yu's words were very conclusive, Wang still didn't believe it. Which great magician are you talking about? Please tell me in detail. Wang couldn't help but ask. Lin Yu didn't mean to show off, and said directly. Caecilius, he has been corrupted by darkness. If you observe carefully, you will find the dark power in him. After hearing this, Tian fell into deep thought. Lin Yu was speechless, saying that it was impossible for the magician to betray Kamar Taj, and when it came to Caecilius, you just hesitated, right? Honest people may not necessarily have bad intentions. After thinking for a moment, the king spoke. Thank you for your advice. I'm going to find someone to try and investigate this. Very good, Lin Yu said with satisfaction, and the figure disappeared without a trace. As long as Wang Ku himself verified that what he said was true, then he would not need to be too involved in the rest of the matter. His status will naturally improve. Lin Yu followed Wang with his spiritual power. Wang walked out of the library with deep thoughts. What Lin Yu didn't know made Wang feel very complicated. Although he instinctively didn't believe Lin Yu's words, his reason told him that this was very possible. Wang is just a simple and honest man, not stupid. He knows that people in this world are not that simple. Not everyone wants to be as pure and simple as a superhero. He decided to investigate first. However, this kind of thing must not be carried out with great fanfare, otherwise it will cause huge amounts of damage to the prestige of Kamar Taj magician. It must be investigated quietly, on a small scale, with a few magicians. Wang already has a candidate in mind. He planned to bring 2 magicians, Bono and Luke, plus a witness, Mordo, which was enough. As the saying goes, people of the same kind flock together and things divide into groups. They also received guidance from the magic book, and naturally they all gathered together. It can be regarded as the king's hardcore. This is also the reason why Bono and Luke sounded subconsciously to the king. As for calling Modu, it was entirely because they needed a prestigious person to testify. Caecilius is a big magician, why should others believe his empty talk? As a disciple of the Ancient One, Modu has this prestige. It all decided that the king was not in hesitation. The person was quickly found. Luke and Bono, the 2 little magicians, naturally had no objections, while Mordo was completely confused. Wang, what are you looking for? Do you want to spar with me again? I don't want to spar with you. The expression on Modu's face was very serious. He has already experienced Wang's strength. Although he feels very jealous, he definitely does not want to ask for trouble and get beaten by himself. He is no longer a match for Wang. Modu's face was serious, and Wang was even more serious than him. That's not what I'm looking for you for. I discovered some bad clues. There are those among Kamar Taj who have turned to darkness. Wang thought about it for a while, but still did not reveal the magic book. Instead, he blamed himself for discovering something wrong. Impossible. Modu also spoke decisively, with a slightly displeased look on his face. Wang, you should know that this kind of thing cannot happen. We have very strict selection criteria for magicians. There were a lot of unqualified magicians, we got rid of him, and no division would do something so unwise. Modu spoke to Wang very seriously. The probability of this happening in Kamar Taj is very small. Over the years since Kamar Taj was established, there are only a few people who dare to do such a thing in Kamar Taj. All were killed by the Sorcerer Supreme himself. No one would dare to do such a thing again. Ancient One faces the darkness, but she is not merciless at all. She is not just Kamar Taj, the kind Sorcerer Supreme. The lives of her men were probably much greater than those of the entire Kamar Taj combined. Wang was not surprised to see Modu say this. I know what you mean. I'm just suspicious. I just asked you to check it out. Ordinary magicians really don't dare, but big magicians don't necessarily. Just in case, let's go take a look. If something happens, it's a big deal. Wang pretended to be relaxed and said. That's right. Mordo nodded. Who is this person you are talking about? Caecilius. Who? Modu's face showed a look of consternation visible to the naked eye. Caecilius. Wang repeated it again. That's really interesting. Then let's go take a look. Modu looked strange and was even more shocked, but he quickly said, I'm afraid the Lord will regret it at that speed. Wang was a simple and honest man, and was not good at observing people's emotions, so he naturally did not see anything wrong with Modu. Hearing Modu's agreement, he nodded and walked towards Caecilius's residence with the three of them. The great magicians have a high status in Kamartaj and have their own independent residences. Caecilius's residence is in a remote location in Kamartaj. But as soon as he arrived at Caecilius, Modu felt something was wrong. Ceiling magic circle. Why did Caecilius arrange this in his room? Modu was a little confused. The ceiling circle is used to prevent the magician's aura from leaking out. Who in the right mind would decorate this in their room? Modu felt happy and felt that what Wang said was probably very close to the truth. He was even more anxious than the king. He didn't even knock on the door, just opened the door and walked in. Wang felt that this was not good, and just wanted to stop him, but saw Modu and several magicians in the room performing some kind of ceremony. A large amount of dark power emanated from their bodies. However, it was blocked by the magic circle and nothing leaked out at all. Caecilius was shocked when he saw Mordo pushing the door open. Why are you here? Caecilius's heart sank. He suddenly felt bad, and secretly thought that he had been careless. In the absence of the Ancient One, he lost his vigilance. Now, trouble. In Caecilius' room, the momentum suddenly became tense. The two magicians behind Caecilius even secretly hid their weapons behind their backs. Only, before they had time to take action, Modu had already spoken first. Caecilius, you betrayed Kamartaj and absorbed the power of darkness. Hurry up and capture him. Just obey the Sorcerer Supreme and you will still have a way to survive. When Wang heard what Modu said, his heart skipped a beat. Caecilius was so arrogant that he could not hear this. Even if he didn't make any mistakes, he might have to fight against them now. Not to mention that this guy has indeed absorbed the power of darkness. Now that you have discovered it, I won't say more. You are just a group of frogs in a well, you have no idea how powerful I am. That is eternal life, the only one in the world. Caecilius said enthusiastically. Wang frowned. He had never seen Caecilius so enthusiastic. He has always been a rational and arrogant magician. He is arrogant and looks down upon no one but himself. How can the power of darkness be so capable of corrupting people's hearts? Demagogue, since you were captured without hesitation, don't blame me for ignoring our friendship. Modu said righteously. A wave of his hand. A red magic shield appeared in his hand. Haha, it's up to you. Caecilius sneered disdainfully. Follow me if you can. I'm not that stupid to fight you in Kamartaj. After saying that, Caecilius stretched out his hand and a portal appeared behind him. Without saying a word, he walked in with his men. Kamartaj is more than just a holy place. This place can be said to be a war fortress. On the surrounding city walls, there are many magical artillery, whose power even a great magician like him would not dare to take advantage of. If you fight in Kamartaj, you will lose. Entering the mirror dimension, Modu had no time to ask for help. And in the mirror dimension, he can master the power of space, which has a great advantage. Caecilius made a decision in the blink of an eye and entered the mirror dimension directly. Let's chase. Modu shouted loudly and chased after him directly. Wang glanced at Modu's back, a little confused. Why is this Modu more active than him? But this is a good thing after all. Let's go, let's. Wang looked at the two magicians next to him and said something before entering the portal. As soon as he entered the portal, he saw Mordo confronting Caecilius. Caecilius, you can't escape. You must be judged by the Sorcerer Supreme. Mordo held a magic shield in his hand and shouted loudly. No one can judge me. Not even the Ancient One. And you just want to stop me. Caecilius glanced at Mordo with disdain again. Caecilius's dismissive attitude made Mordo feel angry in his heart. Let me see how you have the confidence to say such a thing. Modu snorted coldly. He is also a disciple of the Ancient One. How big is the gap between him and Caecilius? After speaking, he grabbed the shield and rushed forward. The boots of Wadam under his feet emitted a golden light, which suddenly increased Mordo's speed by a large margin. In the blink of an eye, he was in front of Caecilius. In an instant, the red magic shield in his hand turned directly into a scarlet magic chain, which kept dropping red sparks and threw it towards Caecilius. This move shows the power of Modo, the great magician. Instantly changing the form of magic, even in the entire Kamar Taj, there are probably only a handful of people who have mastered this technique. This magic release technique can increase the power of magic very quickly. The power of the scarlet chain is very terrifying. But Caecilius was unfazed. A disdainful smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. He stepped back, just in time to avoid Modu's attack. A golden light flashed in his hand, and a magic shield appeared in his hand. He slapped forward hard. The golden shield hit Modu directly on the chest. Click! A crisp sound sounded, and Modu was knocked out several meters by the huge force, and his chest actually collapsed. One blow. The great magician of Kamar Taj, the disciple of the Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One, was directly seriously injured by Caecilius. The king couldn't help but shrink his pupils. Modu's face was full of disbelief, and he seemed to ignore even the pain in his chest. How could you have such power? Your body. Ahem. Mordo coughed twice in pain and stared at Caecilius. Only now did he understand how he lost. Caecilius's speed is too fast and his body is too strong. He is completely ahead of him by a level to be able to achieve this kind of crushing. If Caecilius's speed is not fast enough, he can react completely. Only, how did Caecilius become so powerful? Magician, what's wrong with you? Luke arrived at Modu's side and used the 5-star Gang Yuandu to control the exit point. Ahem. Puff. Modu coughed and spat out a mouthful of blood. The great magician of Kamar Taj actually lost his fighting ability under Caecilius's blow. If it weren't for the powerful vitality of the magicians, I'm afraid Modu would have directly ascended to heaven at this moment. Leave me alone. Get Caecilius. Mordo stared at Caecilius and said. He knew that Caecilius could never be allowed to escape. Otherwise he will definitely be in big trouble. Now that Cassius has become so powerful, he doesn't want to let his opponent run away. Give it to me. Wang nodded in this direction and stepped forward. Caecilius, what a pity, I didn't expect you to absorb the power of darkness. Now we have a chance to do it. Wang said in a deep voice. Only you. You have the power that your so-called magic book gives you, and so do I. I have obtained endless dark power from the great dark space, why are you my opponent? Caecilius spoke coldly. You'll know it if you've fought it. I won't hold back. Wang shook his shoulders and made a crisp sound. Joke. You still want to keep your hand? Are you worthy? I will let you see what real power is. Only by joining me in the darkness is the right path. You are so ignorant that you don't understand what real power is. The dark space is the real eternity of life. Dormammu can give us eternal life. Caecilius shouted. His eyes were full of enthusiasm. I will not enjoy this kind of eternal life with you. Wang's tone was very firm. In the mirror dimension, Lin Yu's perspective is high above, looking at the magicians confronting each other on the field. Especially when he perceived the dark aura on Caecilius, Lin Yu couldn't help but shake his head. Caecilius, who gained the power of Dormammu, is indeed very powerful. In the movie, Caecilius attacks Kamar Taj, who is almost invincible. The great magician of Kamar Taj was not even his enemy in one fell swoop. Wang was even killed instantly. The only people in Kamar Taj that Caecilius was afraid of at the time were the Ancient One and Strange, who had the protagonist aura. It can be seen how powerful Caecilius is. Even if Shanza has not reached the terrifying level in the future, he is definitely not something that ordinary magicians can deal with now. Modu was seriously injured by one of his moves, which shows how powerful he is. Lin Yu really wants to know how far Caecilius's strength can reach. The king who has learned the Liushaoyan Shattering Fist is not his opponent. The Flowing Rock Shattering Fist is a punch from the world of One Punch Superman. Bangu, who originally had power, could instantly kill dragon-level monsters, the monsters that destroyed cities. The Flowing Rock Shattering Fist certainly doesn't have that much destructive power. But when dealing with people, the power is even greater. Boxing is a fighting technique created with human targets in mind. Can this king practice Liushaoyan Shattering Fist? Can he defeat Caecilius, who has obtained the Dormammu Power Star? Lin Yu expressed great expectations for this. While Lin Yu was watching the show, the two people confronting him had already taken action. The one who struck first was none other than Caecilius. King, I've long had enough of your submissive look. The strong should dominate the weak. This world is about the jungle. Caecilius's eyes were black and his words were wild. As soon as he raised his hand, a blade that looked like transparent glass appeared in his hand. It is the unique magic mastered by Caecilius, the space blade. Just compared to before, the magic he is using now is obviously more terrifying. Even at a distance of dozens of meters, one could still feel a sharp aura. It feels like someone is holding an extremely sharp blade between your eyebrows. You can feel threatened all the time. This space blade is much more powerful. Wang's heart sank and he adjusted his emotions. Caecilius, you have become stronger. By taking refuge in Dormammu, you gain power that is not your own. Wang said in a deep voice. Hehe. Does your strength come from yourself? Your strength is just given by others. Essentially, we are the same. Stop talking nonsense and accept the attack. I want to see if you can block my attack now. Caecilius had an excited expression on his face. Dormammu is a dark space lord with a powerful space force zone far beyond Superman's level. After following Dormammu, his space power has also been greatly strengthened. Now the power of his space blade has also been greatly increased. Holding the space blade in his hand, Caecilius rushed forward. Kamar Taja's magician combat doesn't have as many bells and whistles. Just rely on magic to fight with others. Even if Caecilius obtains dark power, he will not be an exception. After the dark power strengthened his body, his speed became very fast and very strange. With steps like dancing steps, Caecilius arrived in front of the king in a few seconds, and stabbed the king with the space blade in his hand. The sharp space blade, wherever it passed, the space was torn apart to a certain extent, and the air burst out. Visible ripples appeared. Wang's expression condensed. Silvery white light emerged between his hands. This is the power brought by Liu Shaoyan's shattering fist. Flowing water formation. The dancing of his hands brought up the silvery white light and began to flow around the king. A set of semicircular silver-white shields formed directly around the king, and airflow visible to the naked eye rose around it. Old-fashioned tactics. If you only had this method, you would be dead today. Caecilius sneered and thrust the space blade forward in his hand. The transparent space blade collides directly with the invisible shield. Caecilius felt his magic pierce into jelly. It didn't touch the real point at all, and it was weak. There are all kinds of strange powers next to him, making his magic constantly swing. Caecilius seemed to have entered an undercurrent, with strange forces everywhere, and he couldn't get out for a while. Caecilius' expression changed. What kind of method is this? His power has been greatly strengthened, which is completely different from before. But the king's defense seemed to have a turtle shell on himself, which could not be opened at all. I still don't believe it. Caecilius gritted his teeth. The space blade in his hand suddenly dissipated and he got out in time. With a powerful movement, a more powerful space blade appeared in his hand again. Hold this magic in both hands. Caecilius directly slashed with his backhand. The space was cut open, and transparent ripples appeared in the air. The light in his hand seemed to be split apart by this magic. Phew, it was like hitting the balloon, and there was a sound of airflow disappearing. The transparent shield around the king shrank in size. But as water flows, Wang's strength was strong and soft, and he recovered again in the blink of an eye. Not only that, the silvery white stream of light also bounced back along with Caecilius's power. Caecilius was directly hit by this powerful force, and the magic in his hands came out directly, feeling a chest tightness and shortness of breath. I took a deep breath to catch my breath. What kind of method is this? How can you become so powerful in a short period of time? Caecilius' face was very ugly, and his heart was unimaginable. After he threw himself into the darkness, he gained a lot of dark power, which greatly increased his power. But what about the king? Obviously I haven't seen him do anything. His strength also increased. He could clearly perceive that the king's power had not increased even a little bit. How is this done? This is unreasonable. My power comes entirely from myself. You do not understand. The magic book not only gives us inheritance, but also gives us a more powerful path to practice. Wang put his hands away and said, I do not believe. There is no such perverted thing in this world. It is impossible to have such a heritage project. Caecilius was completely unconvinced. The magic book cannot be so perverted. Not even the great Dormammu can provide such terrifying power. Why is this so-called magic book? This kind of power is more powerful than the power of darkness. The mirror dimension is a very deep magic. There are also not many people in Kamar Taj. Although the portal is a portal to and from the mirror dimension, ordinary magicians do not have the ability to use the portal to connect to the mirror dimension. So no one is disturbing here. Except for a few magicians present, there was only Lin Yu's mind. The fight between Caecilius and Wang was like a falcon coming from a rabbit, and they had actually exchanged several moves. Relying on the flowing rock-shattering fist, Caecilius was actually slightly inferior to the opponent. To know, this is Caecilius who has obtained the power of Dormammu. Although he does not have the combat power to kill the great magician in an instant, it is definitely extraordinary. Now they were fighting, but they suffered a small loss at the hands of the king. It can be seen that Li's Haoyan shattering fist is really extraordinary. Or, the previous king had just mastered this technique and had not shown the charm of this boxing technique at all. Now after a period of hard study and practice, I finally have some flavor. Li's Haoyan broken boxing means flowing water, which is both hard and soft and long-lasting. The defensive flow formation is even more unpredictable. It is normal for Caecilius to return without success. But Caecilius didn't know this. After the shock, there is anger arising from the bottom of my heart. He couldn't accept it. Essentially, all people's anger comes from their own incompetence. Caecilius couldn't accept that he accepted the power of darkness and was unable to kill the king instantly. Doesn't this mean that everything he did was a joke? This is impossible. I don't believe there are such amazing methods in this world. The greatness of Dormammu is beyond your imagination. Caecilius shouted angrily. Caecilius, you are too possessed. Dormammu is the dark evil god who is best at deceiving people. Even if he gives you power, he still has a plan. You must quickly surrender and don't fall deeper into the trap. Wang said in a deep voice. Wang is still honest. Even so, I still worry about the friendship with the same people. If it were Mordo, he wouldn't say much to Caecilius, but he would rush forward with his knife drawn. Unfortunately, Caecilius didn't appreciate this. The frog in the well. You simply don't understand the greatness of Dormammu. It is eternity, it is everything. The great Dormammu can make everything in this world eternal and beautiful. On the contrary, Ancient One is a liar. Don't you want to know why she was able to live for so long? Caecilius's face was full of mockery. What Sorcerer Supreme does has nothing to do with me, that's his decision. I just need to capture you and hand you over to the Sorcerer Supreme. Wang's voice was steady and his expression was calm, without any wavering. It's up to you. Do you think this is all my power? Great Dormammu, your servant Caecilius begs you to grant me more power. Caecilius fell to his knees and shouted. The black aura in his eyes seemed to be condensing into substance. A crack opened directly in the sky of the mirror dimension, and in this crack, black aura was constantly surging. It seemed as if some monster was about to emerge from this black crack. Caecilius, you are stubborn. The king's expression changed drastically. He felt the dark power as deep as the sea. It was as if a giant hand was holding his throat, and his breathing was not smooth. King, stop him. Mordo was also shouting anxiously. If it were not for being seriously injured, he would have wanted to get up and attack. He came to deal with Caecilius, not to seek death. If Dormammu in the sky really came here, unless the Ancient One returns in time, everyone here will die. Dormammu is not something they can resist at all. It is an existence that can easily swallow a planet. The powerful and weird aura in the sky is simply despairing. Wang obviously knew this too. We can never let Dormammu come. Logically speaking, it is impossible for Dormammu's body to come to the earth. The three holy places use the earth's magic source to create powerful magic circles. Most powerful beings cannot enter this world. Dormammu can only come in with a projection. But even a projection is not something they can resist. Wang San rushed to Caecilius in 2 steps and punched him directly with his fist. The Li's Haoyan shattering fist has unparalleled defense, but its attack power is also extremely powerful. As the saying goes, a drop of water can penetrate a stone. Few people know that water is one of the most powerful things in the world. Wang's punch was also powerful and heavy, with astonishing power. His fist was covered with silvery white light, and the air formed ripples visible to the naked eye next to his fist. His fist even brought up a lot of airflow. Before the fist arrived, a hurricane had already blown around Caecilius. Only, this huge hurricane was not able to hit Caecilius, but stopped abruptly half a meter away from him. It was as if there was an extra layer of shield around him. Wang's eyes narrowed, obviously noticing this, but he had to shoot because he had an arrow on the string. He must stop Caecilius. Boom! The fist with silver light hit the invisible shield directly, making a muffled sound. Everyone around felt a tightness in their chests. With such a powerful attack, Modu thought he couldn't even take it. With his physical body, just one punch might be enough to penetrate him. It's a pity that the power around Caecilius is obviously not his power. Ha ha ha, naive, so naive. This is the barrier for the arrival of the great Dormammu. Do you think you can break this barrier just by yourself? Whimsical. When I gain great power, all of you will die. Caecilius shouted very arrogantly. Modu was very anxious when he saw this, wishing he could go up and help. But he is now seriously injured and cannot move at all. Zhang Neng is in a hurry. Wang was expressionless. He took a deep breath, and the power of the breathing method in his body began to flow through his body. The breathing method is the essence of Lius Howian Shattering Fist, which can subtly strengthen his physical fitness. His body of copper skin and iron bones all comes from the breathing method. If it weren't for this, if ordinary people practiced like this, they would have destroyed themselves long ago. Not only that, the breathing method can also increase his strength and speed in a short period of time. When the breathing method started to work, his side was filled with silvery white light, and his whole person seemed to be enveloped in a layer of water vapor. Whoosh! There was just a soft sound, and Wang suddenly disappeared from the spot. Caecilius, who was inside the shield, looked horrified. Because he didn't even realize how the king disappeared. What a fast pace. Lin Yu's consciousness was in the sky and he couldn't help but praise. Wang used the power of Lius Howian Shattering Fist breathing technique, which was extremely fast. How fast is the king? He has disappeared to the naked eye. It is almost impossible to catch his figure with the naked eye, even the big magician. That is to say, Lin Yu has a strong perception ability to be able to grasp the whereabouts of the king. Wang was circling in front of the invisible barrier. Build up strength for your own attacks. At a certain moment, his strength reached its peak. Then, he took action. For a moment, dozens of king's figures instantly appeared around Caecilius's shield. Caecilius' pupils suddenly shrank. Nor is he an ignorant man. Naturally, he could tell that the king's speed was too fast, and afterimages were formed around him in an instant. It's not that Wang learned the duplication technique. Fake, why has this guy become so strong? How can a big magician have such speed? Are magic books really that perverted? Caecilius couldn't help but curse. Unreasonable. A magician shouldn't have such physical qualities. Even though he was blessed with Dormammu's power, he didn't have such physical fitness. Is this guy still a human being? Caecilius once again lamented that this guy Wang's body can literally tear apart demons with his hands. He has embarked on a completely different path from Kamar Taj. I'm afraid no one will believe Wang when he says he is a magician. Your magician arms are thicker than other people's thighs, and the muscles on your body are harder than steel. Just quickly, Caecilius had no time to think about all this. The king's attack arrived. Bang, bang, the dense fists like a rainstorm directly hit the invisible shield around Caecilius. The powerful fist caused waves of ripples on the invisible barrier. The tyrannical dark aura around him seemed to be dispelled. Fake. Caecilius couldn't help but cursed in his heart again. This guy Wang has taken some kind of medicine, this is too strong. Doesn't it consume his physical strength? This kind of high-frequency movement consumes a lot of physical strength. Just like ordinary people running, the time they can last for a 100-meter sprint and ordinary jogging is definitely different. But Wang's attacks with such frequency showed no weakness at all. What a ghost. No dog is allowed to let him succeed. Caecilius looked at the sky and immediately began to seize the time to absorb the power of darkness. I hope to absorb more dark power before this shield is broken. Dormammu's power is endless. In the dark space, he can be said to be the most powerful existence, possessing power that ordinary people cannot match. But the power that can be transmitted to the earth is very rare. Caecilius didn't think the invisible shield around him could last long. As the dark power continued to be absorbed, his eye sockets gradually began to turn dark, and the skin above them began to peel off, revealing a sticky black color like paint. Even if you look carefully, you can still find strange colorful lights in this sticky black. Looks extremely evil. Only, of all the people present, only Lin Yu in the sky noticed this. His magical power of perception is completely different from the human eye. It can perceive a large amount of information and easily see through a person's essence. This guy, in order to gain power, would do anything. The essence of life has been changed. This power is so evil. The power of a strong will is not so easy to accept. Lin Yu watched Caecilius' changes and secretly became more vigilant. Caecilius is now completely been transformed. Under his skin, there was no human body at all. Rather, it is a strange organization composed entirely of dark forces. That is the kind of little black man who appeared after Dormammu left. Essentially, the human named Caecilius has long since disappeared. What's left here is just an unknown thing wearing the body of Caecilius, and it looks like there are only some changes on the surface. Seeing the true nature, any normal person would feel disgusted. Lin Yu is naturally no exception. He secretly became more vigilant towards Dormammu, and would definitely have to be more careful when meeting this guy in the future. When Lin Yu was worried, there was a change on the field again. Caecilius, who was protected by the invisible shield, suddenly stiffened. He heard a crisp crackling sound in his ears. Look up. On the invisible shield, there were cracks visible to the naked eye, following Wang's punch attack. This shield didn't last long at all. Click. Wow. This invisible shield is no different from ordinary large glass fragments. After breaking through the limit, Wang used powerful force to directly destroy this shield with ease. The next second the king's figure was revealed. Caecilius, stop. Wang warned very seriously. How could Caecilius have the intention to stop at this level? Instead, he absorbed the power of darkness even harder. How could the king care about keeping his hand? In a flash, the fat body appeared in front of Caecilius and punched him directly in the face. This punch can be said to be powerful and heavy. Even a small building may be smashed to pieces by this terrifying attack. After Caecilius received this punch, his head shape shifted, becoming like a habit of being smashed. Disgusting black liquid flowed out of his nostrils. Only, this kind of injury, which would be fatal to ordinary people, was nothing to Caecilius. Boom. Caecilius was sent flying out and embedded in the wall. If it were an ordinary magician, he would be dead at this moment. Ahem, cough, cough, you're a little late. I've completed the transformation. Now I have become the greatest creature in the world, and I am immortal. You idiot can't do anything to me. I am an invincible existence. Caecilius is like an inflated balloon. That shriveled head suddenly grew back again. His face was full of smiles. The king is nothing but a reckless man. Instead of increasing his full power, he chose to accept Dormammu's dark power and transform his body. Now his body can be said to be immortal. For ordinary people, he can completely ignore injuries that are fatal. This is what his opponent who knows that he is not a king wants to do. Come up with countermeasures. No matter how powerful the force is, it cannot destroy the water flow. It's impossible to destroy such a flexible body like his. Caecilius also admitted that the king was very powerful. This great magician, who originally looked ordinary among Kamar Taj, received the inheritance of the magic book and seemed to be a different person. It was like taking medicine, and I was in a complete mess. He, a guy who had gained the power of the dark evil god, could only accept defeat. Is this justified? Caecilius felt angry, even a little aggrieved. This guy is just too much. He was so aggressive that he was forced to transform his body. This is a shame that he has not mentioned for many years. But, what you think in your heart is one thing. How it appears on the outside is another matter. Although he was shocked and angry in his heart, Caecilius still looked very arrogant. I have the power of Dormammu. What if you're not sure? And I will come back again. Caecilius spoke loudly. Lin Yu couldn't help laughing while watching the show in the sky. At first, he wanted to kill the king, but now his tone has changed. It seems that this Caecilius also understands the truth that a man who knows the current affairs is a wise man. Makes sense. Being arrogant does not mean you are stupid. Caecilius naturally made the distinction very clearly. It's a pity that he doesn't have a human form now, otherwise he would have to mock Caecilius. Now he can only think about it in his mind and continue watching the show. Wang is a simple and honest man. But he definitely doesn't lack determination. Seeing Caecilius walking all the way through the darkness with no intention of looking back, he was not prepared to hold back. Caecilius, since you brought it upon yourself, don't blame me for not talking about our old friendship. If you died during the attack, you are out of luck. Wang said seriously. In previous battles, he still needed some magical weapons to assist him. Now Fist relies on a pair of iron fists. His body is the most powerful weapon to him. Bring it on. As the saying goes, if you lose people, you don't lose the formation. With his younger brother watching, it was naturally impossible for Caecilius to lose his momentum. Otherwise, you will lose before you even fight. As soon as Caecilius finished speaking, a sandbag-like fist came in front of him and knocked the others away. Caecilius was furious. What a flexible fat man, with no martial ethics. You actually made a sneak attack. Wang was silent and had no intention of answering. He came close and punched him. This punch directly deflated Caecilius's chest. It's just that after Caecilius' body was transformed, it was obvious that he no longer belonged to humans. It returned to normal in the blink of an eye. And Caecilius is not an easy person after all. The two transparent blades in his hands slashed at the king. Even the ground was shapeshifting under his control, constantly trying to attack the king. This is Caecilius' control of manipulating the mirror dimension to gain terrain advantage. In the movie, he and the Ancient One are even able to change the entire mirror dimension. But now, he doesn't have that kind of power. Lin Yu estimated that Caecilius' strength was only 50% to 60% of what was shown in the movie. Even so, it also brought huge amounts of trouble to Wang. Lia's Haoyan Shattering Fist is good at everything, but it doesn't have all kinds of mysterious methods. Wang's original magic level is of no use in a battle of this level. With Caecilius taking advantage of the favorable location, the king actually felt a bit embarrassed. Isn't this the embarrassment of those who practice the body? Too few means. It would be okay if Caecilius was still a serious magician, but if he received a punch from the king, he would be dead. However, the power of Dormammu was obtained. It seems that Caecilius is still a human being, but his essence has become some kind of energy creature. Although he is not physically strong, he cannot be beaten to death. Very difficult delivery. By controlling the location of the mirror dimension and various magics, Caecilius can naturally unite the king to bring huge amounts of trouble. But the king was not without the ability to fight back. His body is extremely tough and can be said to be indestructible. Even the various changing terrains were dwarfed in front of the king, and he forced them away with his body. He rushed in front of Caecilius and changed hands to Ikuta House. Even the magic released by Caecilius was directly smashed by the king with his fists and bare hands. Caecilius was really having a hard time. Without the power that Dormammu continuously provided, he would have been beaten to death by the king long ago. If we continue to fight like this, I'm afraid the two of us can fight forever. But Wang obviously didn't want to continue like this. The king smashed the gravel in front of him with one punch and dodged a brilliant magic. Falling to the ground, Wang took a deep breath. After such a long break, breathing techniques are available again. This is also the benefit of a strong body, with amazing resilience. Even though the breathing method consumes an astonishing amount of energy, he can still use it again quickly. In layman's terms, it means that the skill CD has been transferred. Silvery white light began to flash in Wang's eyes. This made Wang, a big man with a sinister look on his face, look somewhat majestic. Caecilius felt a thump in his heart. Every time this silvery white light appears on the king's body, it means that the king's power will be greatly increased. He didn't have time to react. I felt a pain in my body. The body flew out as if it had been hit by a train. This is not the end. Fly halfway. He felt a huge force coming from behind him. Puff. It was like a balloon filled with water being pushed with great force, and various sounds came from inside. It's just the blink of an eye. Caecilius felt that he had been attacked countless times, and his whole body was like a broken sack. Phew! Caecilius spurted out a mouthful of black liquid with a look of shock on his face. This is impossible. How could you possibly break my defense? Your power shouldn't be able to reach this level. Caecilius was shocked and angry. The king actually broke his defense. How can this be? He gave up the powerful power given by Dormammu and specifically strengthened his body. Logically speaking, pure power, no matter how powerful it is, cannot break through the defense. But Wong did it. He felt pain everywhere in his body. There was even black liquid flowing out from the wound, but it turned into black smoke in the air, which looked very strange. The king looked at Caecilius expressionlessly. As long as you are strong enough, there is nothing you can't break. What's more, what I used was not pure power. The king's words gave Caecilius a chill, and he didn't dare to move for a while. Saw this scene. Modu next to him also sighed. King. So strong. They are no longer strong at their level. In the mirror dimension, only the sound of Caecilius being beaten by the king remained. Puff, puff, puff. It was like a ball of rags being constantly whipped, with various sounds constantly coming from it. The few magicians around were looking at the wooden bench pockets. I didn't expect that the usually peaceful Wong would have such a violent side. This Caecilius was originally a personable person. Now they are all beaten into pieces. Even Modu next to him couldn't stand it anymore. King, that's enough. We just need to subdue him, and then subdue these guys. You're not retaliating, are you? Modu couldn't help but speak. Wang's posture is really very different from before. Caecilius has already been killed, why are you still fighting? As soon as he finished speaking, he saw Wang raising his head and looking at him. Careful, Wang shouted. Before Modu could react, he saw 4 black figures appearing around him. He attacked him. It was not just Caecilius who followed Caecilius into the mirror dimension, but also 4 of his loyal men. It's just that these magicians have been silent before, just like Deadman, and no one pays attention to them. But at this moment, these 4 people suddenly took action. He immediately attacked the injured Modu. Modu was shocked and angry, with a bit of astonishment in his eyes. Big magician, this is impossible, Modu couldn't help but exclaimed, but his body was a little unruly. The magic power that he usually wields like an arm seems to have no effect at this moment. Looking at the magic blade attacking him, Modu felt a little desperate. Base. Fortunately, at this moment, a golden light flashed. Modu couldn't help but close his eyes. The next time he opened his eyes, he had already appeared dozens of meters away. Magician, are you okay? Bono's voice came from the side. Fine. Du was shocked and glanced at Bono in front of him. Did not expect. Bono couldn't intervene in the battle between Wang and Caecilius, but his strength was also very strong. He actually saved him at the last moment. But, now is certainly not the time to give thanks. He looked at the 4 figures over there, dark and nervous. Be careful, those guys have great magician strength. Say this. The sincere feeling in Modu's heart was a bit ridiculous. How many magicians are there in the entire Kamar Taj? It's just a dozen people. These are all Kamar Taj's top combat capabilities, and they all carry heavy responsibilities. But what about now? 4 magicians appeared in front of him at once. What a joke. Go and call for backup, you can't deal with them. Although I was very shocked in my heart, the truth was not very impressive. He felt that with their current strength and his serious injury, it was impossible to deal with these 4 magicians. Need help. It would be great if he could be sent out first. But, Bono in front of him showed no intention of moving. A lazy smile appeared on his face. He turned into 4 big magicians. How scary it is. Modu, is there any hint of fear in your tone? What does this mean? Looking at your expression, is there any hint of fear? Is this kid crazy? He had already heard of Bono's name. I just heard his name, not because of how outstanding he is, but because of how weird this guy is. It's totally out of tune with the magicians. Although he is only in his 30s, he looks very anxious. I just didn't expect that this kid still has mental problems. Those are 4 big magicians. How do you deal with these 2 little magicians when the king can't get rid of them? Bono didn't care at all what Modu was thinking. Buzz. Golden light flashes. He turned into a ray of light again, disappeared directly, and appeared next to Luke the next moment. Boy, how many can you deal with? Bono's lazy voice sounded. Report to Bono Magician, I can only deal with one person. Luke looked heavy, not as confident as before. A month ago, he was just a magician apprentice. Even if you have obtained the powerful power inheritance from the magic book, practiced until now, and your strength has greatly improved, there will not be much change. Being able to deal with a large magician's combat power is already very outstanding. Not bad, better than my wife's. You deal with one and leave the rest to me. I didn't expect that following the big magician, we would have a chance to take action. If I had known it would be so troublesome, I wouldn't have come. Bono couldn't help but groan. Luke next to him couldn't help but shake his head. This magician is really speechless. But, naturally he would not say such words. Now that you say so. Then I'll go first. Luke greeted Bono, glanced at the king who was fighting Caecilius, and his expression became serious. Although Caecilius seemed to be beaten again, he couldn't be beaten to death. There seemed to be a magic shield emerging around Shapeshifting's body, blocking the king's attacks and occasionally being able to fight back. The vitality is amazing. He must deal with these guys in front of him and help quickly. These senior magicians under the name of Caecilius have now become black magicians, mastering the power of darkness. Maybe there's also terrifying black magic. Good thing. It's not like he hasn't made progress for such a long time. With the practice of the sixth form of the Navy, his physical fitness has been greatly improved. That's all. After all, they are just ordinary people with strong bodies. What matters is, through continuous practice of the 6 naval styles, he finally realized the ultimate power, domineering. Everyone is born with the power of life and soul, possessing extremely high potential and powerful power. After mastering hockey, he is no longer the little magician who can only fight with his body. There is a fiery light in the eyes. Luke aimed directly at an opponent. Shave. A loud shout. His figure seemed to become illusory, with several afterimages moving around him. Large amounts of smoke appeared out of thin air on the ground. This is impossible. How can this little magician have the fighting power of a big magician? Modu couldn't help but scream. What a joke. Is the big magician so worthless now? How long has passed? This little magician has the combat power of a big magician. Is this kid a genius? No, it's definitely not because of ability. It's a magic book. Yes, that magic book. Modu was extremely shocked. Luke is just an ordinary magician apprentice. It was the magic book that changed his destiny and made him so powerful. It is impossible for magic to advance at such a speed. Chapter 51. Caecilius was a proud man. But before falling into darkness, no one would say that he was a good magician. Ability and moral character have never had the slightest relationship. Such a powerful person naturally has many magicians following him. People like Caecilius. Naturally, it is impossible for ordinary magicians to follow him. So the one who followed him was originally a senior magician, or a young man with better ability among Kamar Taj. In Kamar Taj, most of the young men were under the command of Caecilius. It's just that these people are more loyal. After Caecilius was bewitched by Dormammu, he would naturally not forget his loyal subordinates. Gather them as soon as possible. The power of darkness also eroded these people. They are already senior magicians, and their strength is not weak. Now after gaining the power of Dormammu, he has the power of darkness. From then on, we entered the realm of magician. For ordinary people, magicians are indeed out of reach. When you become a great magician, you can possess extremely powerful power, even beyond the scope of human beings. For a giant like Dormammu who can easily devour planets, big magician is nothing. It was easy to get out early. This does not mean that they are weak. On the contrary, because of the power of darkness, they may be much stronger than before. Luke faced a magician and immediately felt the pressure. This magician looks like a middle-aged man, and his eye sockets are completely black like Caecilius. There is a layer of darkness surrounding the body. But this didn't stop him from using magic. The golden light flashed suddenly, which was the attack of the magic chain. 803, Moon Steps. Luke subconsciously wanted to avoid it. But he saw the golden magic chain burst suddenly, and there was a black breath in it that turned into 3 long snake-like chains and shot towards him. Luke's expression condensed. Paper painting. The whole person is like paper, erratic, dodging attacks. After the attack was unsustainable, the group finally stopped. The power of darkness. You guys who accepted the power of darkness are really despicable and shameless. Luke looked at the magician with a solemn expression. This middle-aged magician never spoke. They don't have the power of Caecilius, and the power of the magic chain is not as good as expected. Naturally, they have to spend a little more effort. Even an ordinary magician might not be able to benefit from this kind of trick. This is the dark power of Dormammu. Every bit of power contains Dormammu's will. What I didn't expect was that this little magician was so sharp and his methods were so versatile. The method of turning the body into a fallen leaf is indeed a bit astonishing. On the battlefield, there was no room for him to be distracted for long. Just after thinking for a moment, Luke attacked again. Relying on the physical training of the 6th form of the Navy, he is certainly not as good as a pervert like Wong. But his physical fitness is absolutely amazing. In the blink of an eye, he was in front of the magician again. "Point the gun," Luke shouted. The fingers clicked out at an alarming speed. His fingertips were covered with a black liquid-like substance. It's domineering, armed and domineering. From the world of One Piece, the indestructible power. This kind of power improved his physical fitness to an astonishing level. Let the already extremely powerful finger gun be improved to a higher level. This magician at the level of a great magician cast a magic shield in a hurry. There was no resistance at all, and it was directly destroyed by this finger gun. Snapped. The sound of easy penetration sounded. Luke's fingers penetrated directly into this guy's body. The 4 magicians around him still want support. But before they took action, they felt a flash of golden light. Your opponent is me. Better not get distracted. These 3 Caecilius's men, with livid faces, attacked directly. However, Bono's body kept flashing with golden light, not even a leaf touching his body. His expression looked very relaxed. On Luke's side, it's more difficult. Because his infinitely powerful finger gun did not cause any fatal damage to the magician in front of him. Why are finger guns called finger guns? Because this is a very fast attack, the fingers exert the penetrating power of a firearm. As long as the speed is fast enough and the power is strong enough, nothing can stop this attack. Luke also did well. The large magician-level shield was directly shattered by him. His finger gun penetrated directly into the man's body. The huge power even exploded directly in the magician's body, opening a hole the size of a bowl in his back. Only, for these magicians who have already defected to Dormammu, this is obviously not a fatal injury. A strange smile appeared on this face. He grabbed Luke's arm with both hands and dragged him forcefully beside him. Luke even felt that his fingertips felt burned by fire, and his domineering energy was rapidly being consumed. Luke's expression changed, and powerful force burst out to pull away and retreat. The first time, he failed to succeed. What a monster! Luke's face tightened, and without hesitation, he directly kicked the teacher in front of him with both legs. This kick is powerful and heavy. He has simply used all his power. Boom! This magician's strength was not enough to fight Luke, and he kicked him out. Luke knew that this was not over yet. Just looking at Caecilius, who was still being beaten hard by the king, you can see the strange vitality of these guys. They are not human at all now. Iron! Luke shouted. The blood in the body started to circulate. He seemed to be able to hear rivers constantly flowing in his body, and his heart was like a drum beating constantly. The surface of his body was also slightly red, as if his skin had changed. Coupled with the condensed domination on his body, Luke looks like an Iron Man. Lanjiao! Luke shouted. He jumped up and threw towards the magician with one kick. The air was crushed and condensed in front of this terrifying power. The extremely sharp air directly turned into the sharpest blade in the world. Phew! Like rags being torn, the magician who gained the power of Dormammu was torn apart by him. Modu looked on in shock. What happened? Is it really because he is too old to keep up with the times? This is a big magician. A great magician who has gained the dark power of Dormammu. The strength is much stronger than that of ordinary magicians. Just die like that, directly cut in half. This world. It's so magical. In the mirror dimension, Mordo looked at Luke, the former little magician apprentice, in shock. Little did he know that Lin Yu had already anticipated everything. Navy Style 6, domineering, that's right. The system is really abnormal. Just a little bit of power can give a little magician such fighting power. The system really exceeded my expectations. Seeing Luke's performance, Lin Yu couldn't help but marvel. Dormammu is also a giant in the Marvel world. At least for the Earth, this is a powerful enemy. If it weren't for the existence of Kamar Taj Holy Place, Dormammu could easily swallow the Earth. The power he bestowed was naturally not weak at all. He was engraved in front of Luke, but he was not his enemy at all. It is enough to see that the 5-star Navy Type 6 given by the system is very good. Luke gained the upper hand as soon as he started, easily splitting the magician corrupted by darkness into 2 halves. Only, the magician who has gained the power of Dormammu is not that simple. It can be said that he is not afraid of death and has extremely strong vitality. Caecilius next to him is still struggling with the king, which shows that his vitality has turned blue. The magician was obviously split in half by the vacuum air blade created by Langia, but now he is safe again. There seems to be no trace on his body, and he can even continue to use magic. What kind of monster is this? How come you can't be beaten to death? Luke was also surprised. You know, Lan Zhao directly cut it in half. If it were an ordinary magician, it would be dead. This monster, infected by the power of darkness, spliced its body together again, seemingly unscathed. He didn't know. Dormammu is not a good person. Even among the evil gods, Dormammu is considered an evil existence. This kind of existence that has been eroded by the power of darkness is no longer a human being. Instead, it was transformed into an energy creature similar to Dormammu, with no so-called weaknesses and fixed form. As long as they want to, it is not impossible to become Pee-Pee Shrimp. Of course Luke didn't know this. I don't know. People are very tenacious, so naturally they will not stop taking action just because of this situation. Since cutting you in half doesn't work, I'll chop you into pieces. Let's see if you can be resurrected. Luke snorted coldly. The domineering energy in his body emerged again, directly covering his whole body. He deserves to be armed to protect the senior. Boom. The whole person was knocked out. A purple crystal-like spike emerged from the ground, instantly sending his entire body flying out. If it weren't for Luke's domineering aura, Luke might have been directly pierced by the spike. Looking at the strong black aura exuding from the spikes, one knew that being pricked by this thing was definitely not a good thing. Luke also looked solemn, so insidious. Facing his questioning, the magician opposite didn't say much. Just raise your hands. Suddenly there was a rumble under the ground, and countless spikes shot up from the ground. Black light lingers within it. This attack has a huge range and is extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it has spread over a large area. You must be attacked by him on the ground. The magician who was eroded by the dark power had a smile on his lips. Hee. How can one resist in the face of such power? Can you still go to heaven? So towards. He attacks again. The purple-black spikes on the ground suddenly burst out, looking very terrifying. There are such terrifying spikes within a radius of dozens of meters. They even surrounded Luke from behind. The evil magician over there, with his hands touching the bottom, has weird black lines on his face, as if they were tattoos. There was still a weird smile on his face. In his heart, Luke is already a dead man. After all, Kamar Taj's magician cannot fly. When Luke saw this scene, his face darkened, but he didn't seem nervous at all. Moonstep. He stepped on the ground and jumped 10 meters high. If a normal person jumps up, he will inevitably be affected by gravity and fall directly from the sky. Luke was completely different. Flying into the sky, he was actually able to exert force in midair and step down suddenly with his legs. A burst of white ripples unexpectedly erupted in the air. It was as if something substantial had been stepped on by him. Relying on this power, he actually stopped in the sky. Outrageous. It actually flew. The black magician looked shocked. Modu, who was lying on the ground, looked incomprehensible. What kind of joke is this guy kidding? Is this kid really flying? Your method of getting rid of gravity is quite amazing. Tread the air and take off. Is that human being? Modu had millions of words in his heart, but he could never say them out. No matter how powerful Kamar Taj's magicians are, few can fly. This kid also seems to be a reckless man. How come he is even more powerful? Can you still fly? Why don't you go to heaven? Oh, no, this kid was so shocked that he went to heaven. Modu's teeth were a little sour. The inheritance given by this magic book is simply unreasonable. Magic doesn't work like this. Mordo was shocked by Luke's move. The magician over there who was invaded by the power of darkness is no exception. Immediately stunned, Luke won't miss a great opportunity. Lanzhou. In midair, he stepped down directly. Huge amounts of power burst out directly. His whole body spun around in the air. The extremely fast legs and feet tore through the air and directly produced a harsh sonic boom. A crescent air blade shot towards the magician below. The magician was in a trance. How could he resist such an extremely fast attack? Unable to dodge for a moment, he was torn in half by the crescent-like attack. This is not the end. Luke had known for a long time that this magician would not be killed in this way. After using Lan Ko a few times again, the magician on the ground was torn into pieces. Next moment, he appeared directly above these fragments as if teleporting. The black-armed domineering force seemed to be crushed down. Boom! The ground was directly pushed down to one level. Now it's up to you whether you die or not. Luke fell to the ground, panting. It was obvious that the attack just now brought a lot of burden to him. Good thing. The effect is very significant. This magician, infected by the dark power, cannot die anymore. The magicians were shocked when they saw this scene. In the sky, Lin Yu could see clearly. This kind of power is none other than the power of domineering. Hockey is the most magical power in the world of One Piece, much more magical than Devil Fruit. A strong person who has mastered hockey can even defeat the owner of Devil Fruit ability that can transform into elements. This is not something that pure strength can do. Luke kills this big magician-level magician. Also lost combat effectiveness. Before receiving the inheritance of the magic book, he was just a magician apprentice. Whether it is combat experience or strength, it is nothing. The ability to kill this magician was all due to the sharpness of the 6th Marine style and Yubu's surprise. Caecilius originally brought in 4 magicians. In addition to the one Luke killed, there were 3 others. Modu quickly calculated and felt that the chance of winning was not good. Can Bano, who is known for his laziness, be able to deal with 3 real magicians? 8-foot beautiful Magatama. Just when Modu was confused, he heard a voice coming from next to him. He looked up. In the sky, Bano was suspended in midair. A golden light suddenly appeared in his hand. The next moment, countless golden light bullets fell from the sky. Each light bomb has astonishing destructive power, just like thousands of hand grenades falling from the sky in an instant. Boom, boom. The ground seemed to have been bombed by a modern military force, with a large amount of dust falling out of thin air. If this wasn't the mirror dimension, I'm afraid the entire Kamar Taj would be destroyed. Modu's eyes suddenly widened. He couldn't help but move a few inches back, for fear of being affected by the attack. Don't think that Luke, a pervert, is invincible. Unexpectedly, Bano, a guy who looks very wretched, is actually more brave. Such destructive power. I'm afraid Kamar Taj's most powerful magic can't do it, right? Modu's heart felt like a sudden thunder, and he was extremely shocked. But what he didn't know was that this was just the beginning. Huge amounts of explosions and roars followed. The smoke gradually dissipated. But Bano has no intention of relaxing at all. It's not even death, it's so scary. Bano couldn't help but shake his head. The vitality of these guys is so tenacious. This kind of attack would have killed an ordinary person long ago. The magicians on the other side were fine at all. In their domineering perception, they didn't even have any fluctuations in their breath. This is actually a bit incredible. While Bano was thinking, suddenly a black light shot out from the smoke. This light was so swift that it left only an afterimage in the air and passed through Bano's head. Careful, the black shadow passed through, and Modu's warning voice just sounded. It can be seen how fast this black shadow is. Modu's expression changed drastically. Despicable, even sneak attack. Bano. Modu Xinjiang was extremely angry. Just like that, the elite magician of Kamar Taj died like this. It doesn't matter that Bano is dead. But who can save him? He was still seriously injured. Magician is right. You were originally magicians, but this method is really despicable. Bono's lazy voice sounded again. Modu's face showed a look of shock visible to the naked eye. You're okay. How can this be? I saw with my own eyes something put through the middle of your head. A look of confusion appeared on Modu's face that was visible to the naked eye. He really couldn't understand what happened. He could see it with his own eyes as a black light passed through the middle of Bono's head. There was even a big hole as thick as a thumb on his head. How is it possible that Bono is still alive? Sorcerer Supreme will not survive such fatal injuries. Thank you Mordo for worrying Magician. However, I still have a little ability. This kind of injury can't do anything to me, Bono said with a smile. The wound on his head shone with golden light and healed in the blink of an eye. Modu's eyes widened, as if in disbelief. Is that human being? Isn't this kid also defecting to Dormammu? Otherwise, how could he still be alive with such fatal injuries? What kind of method is this? Modu asked in disbelief. It's elementalization. The body changes directly into light and will not suffer any harm. Luke explained enviously later. Is there such an outrageous ability in this world? Mordo was shocked. In the sky, Lin Yu also kept sighing. Devil fruit is really outrageous. Especially Kizaru's shiny fruit. The power may not be strong, and the combat range may not be large enough, but in terms of life-saving ability, it ranks among the best among all devil fruits. You can see how outrageous this thing is from the battle at the top. Akainu was almost killed by Whitebeard, and his head was covered in blood. What about Kizaru? There isn't even a speck of dust on the clothes. Looking at Kizaru's battles at the factory, is there ever a time when he is not graceful? How can we see that he is not even a little bit embarrassed? This is the sparkling fruit. Bono gains the ability of the shiny fruit. It is almost impossible to injure him with a mere piercing attack. It's not without reason that Bono was able to suppress 3 black magicians with great magician combat power. Lin Yu could only lament once again that the system's methods are unpredictable. This kind of ability can be achieved. Incredible. The combat effectiveness is still second. This ability is really awesome. After the battle, he was spotless and could still pose to show off. Tisk tisk. Lin Yu is looking forward to the days after he has a body more and more. When Lin Yu was daydreaming, it was Bono who started the fight. If the fighting ability of the shining fruit is not good, then it depends on who you compare with. If you study it to the extreme, light can exert extremely powerful power. 8-foot mirror. Bono raised the corners of his mouth slightly and shouted. The whole person turned into a golden light. On the way there, several mirrors suddenly appeared. This ray of light suddenly turned around, catching the black magicians who originally wanted to predict the attack from Mang a little unprepared. Speed is power. My long time has not been in vain. Bono's figure suddenly appeared behind a magician, and he kicked it with his long legs. Compared to the way he couldn't completely transform into elements when he just got the shining fruit. Now, he can completely control every part of his body to elementalize. The power exerted is naturally unusual. The body was covered with a layer of black-armed domineering energy, which instantly changed from light to entity, and kicked the magician directly on the head. Snapped. A crisp sound. It was as if a big watermelon had been smashed directly. This guy's head exploded instantly, and the dark energy inside was directly evaporated. After being strengthened by Dormammu's power, his body was so vulnerable. Defeated instantly by Bono. The horror of the shining fruit ability is evident. The 2 black magicians next to them were startled and couldn't help but take a step back. My heart was extremely shocked. In the mirror dimension, Bono slowly retracted his long legs. The other 2 black magicians did not react. With just one blow, this big magician-level magician was killed. This is a big magician who has gained the power of Dormammu. When did it become so worthless? Although it was because he was unprepared, the power was too strong. And, does this guy actually have some kind of power that can directly erase the power of Dormammu and cut off their recovery? Can this guy also be called a magician? Kamar Taja's magician, when did it become so accurate? If they could easily have such power, wouldn't it be nice for them to surrender to Dormammu and learn these contents directly? But the problem is, they have never seen anything so evil. This thing is much more evil than magic. It doesn't follow common sense at all. What the hell is this? Magician, who was surrounded by darkness, couldn't help but speak in confusion. The hoarse voice was like a night owl in the dark night, very harsh. Please be polite, this is not my thing. It is the shining fruit, the Emperor of Light. Okay, now that you two know it, just ask the two of you to go on your way. Bono said calmly. Mordo and Luke looked at each other. Even the king who was fighting Caecilius over there couldn't help but cast his gaze. This kid, it's too pretentious. Although your ability is very strong, you don't have to show off like that, right? But soon everyone gave up on this idea. Bono clapped his hands together, and golden light suddenly appeared. Dazzling golden light flickered in the mirror dimension. Opening his hands, he actually had a lightsaber in his hand. Golden lightsaber, Tian Kong Yun sword. After practicing for more than a month, I was finally able to use it reluctantly. Let you try the power. Feeling that the weapon in his hand was still a little unstable, Bono was a little excited. This is the most terrifying weapon that a person with the shining fruit ability can condense. Although it is energy, it has an entity structure. It is said to have an entity, but it is entirely made of energy. It can be said, mysterious and mysterious, use it with your heart. Opposite him, the two magicians also felt something was wrong. The power of this weapon cannot be underestimated at first glance. Superior, the two shouted loudly. One person was holding a purple-black longsword, and the other person was holding a long whip that exuded black aura and rushed forward. The magic used by these two people was obviously not Kamar Taj's magic. But judging from the fluctuations emanating from it, its power is not even half as powerful as Kamar Taj's legendary magic. Not to mention, at this moment, the power of Dormammu around them is very strong, and the black magic in their hands is a bit more powerful. Bono could feel a slight tingling sensation coming from his skin, as if a needle was pricking his body. What a terrible method! Bono frowned and stepped back. The golden Tiankongyan sword in his hand swept across without saying a word. The black magician happened to be holding a black long sword and stabbed at him. Seeing Bono actually attacking, a ferocious smile appeared on his face. This is the power given to them by Dormammu. It is infinitely powerful, has an astonishing power of darkness, and is also astonishingly polluting. Whenever a cut is made on the body, it will be the result of being infected by the power of darkness. Seeing that Bono dared to resist, a ferocious smile appeared on his face. Allow, in his opinion, the enemy in front of him is bound to die. Die! The black magician shouted loudly and wanted to take advantage of this direct blow to kill Bono. Unfortunately, he completely underestimated the power of Tian Kongyan's sword. This is a powerful attack technique that can only be mastered after practicing the shining fruit to a certain extent. Among them is the power of light condensed to the extreme. Base. There was a crisp sound. Bono was holding the Tian Kongyan sword, and he actually cut the purple-black long sword into two pieces. Not only that, this day, Kong Yun's sword showed no signs of weakening, and directly cut the magician in half. The body was divided into two parts, and the look of astonishment on the face of the black magician was visible to the naked eye. Unfortunately, he had no time to think again. Bono struck out with a backhand sword again. The black owl magician was cut in half again. The cross-section is as smooth as a mirror, and the dense black mist seems to be gluing the black magician's body together. But above the section, some kind of magical energy was constantly surging, making it impossible for these four pieces of meat to be resurrected. Bono didn't care at all about the magician he killed easily, but turned to look at the other magician. You are the only one left now. Bono spoke to the only remaining magician. The black magician didn't waver at all. Although he was terrified in his heart, he didn't have any intention of retreating and rushed forward waving the black chain. Bono just now acted too quickly. He hasn't reacted yet. The other magician had already been chopped into pieces. It's really amazing. But, after gaining the power of Dormammu, he naturally has no possibility of retreating. The chain in his hand was like a snake exploring the way, and it stabbed at Bono. The black power is constantly entangled and flowing on everyone's face, and it is extremely evil. It's really sad. You have long been enslaved by these evil forces. Bono couldn't help but shake his head when he saw the magician in front of him with a numb expression. Gained the power of Dormammu. Instead of using this power, he became an effort of the dark power, or a slave of Dormammu. Just let me finish this sad cry of yours. We have been colleagues for many years and have perfected our friendship. Bono's eyes turned serious. His whole body turned into a golden light, and he avoided the blow of the black chain by a hair. Then, just lift the sword and cut. With 2 sword blows, the magician had turned into minced meat on the ground. The dead can no longer die. Modu looked at the spotless Bono and then at the black pieces of meat on the ground, and felt as if a thunder had exploded in his heart. People are stupid. So strong. The strength of this guy Bono seems to be much stronger than him. This is the combat power of 3 magicians. Killed instantly so easily. In the entire Kamar Taj, no one can do it except Sorcerer Supreme. The key is, after the beating, the boy seemed to be unscathed. There was no trace of battle at all on his body. It doesn't look like they are out to fight, but rather like they are out to travel. Is this reasonable? Is the power in the magic book really so abnormal? How long does it take? With such strength, what does his decades of practice mean? Mordo now somewhat understands why Caecilius fell into darkness so easily. Encountered this kind of thing. Who can receive it? Just because of good luck, I won it in 1 step. This is too exaggerated. But now Modo is also looking at Bono here. The 2 of them had just dealt with the black magician together. Then should they have a discussion now? Modo had this idea. Because he wanted to see what kind of strength Bono had. What kind of power can that magic book bring to him? The most important thing is that he wants to know the secrets in this magic book. But at the moment, Modu was also extremely numb. He didn't know if Bono could agree to his request. He was also looking at Bono in front of him. Bono knew that he had a plan on his side. In this magic book, there is also Lin Yu. And Lin Yu is still watching from the sky. This also meant that he had to agree to all Modu's requests. He was also strolling, and after walking in front of this person, he also said to him, "Why did you suddenly come to me? Now Black Magician has also died quietly. What do you have to say?" At the moment, Mordo also communicated a few words to Bono here. He also informed Bono that he now wanted to have a discussion with Bono. He wanted to see what kind of tyrannical power the magic book in Bono's hand had. If he didn't learn from each other, he wouldn't be able to bear it. He is here. After finishing these words, he was also silently looking at Bono in front of him. He believed that Bono would definitely agree. At this time, Bono was also extremely embarrassed. He actually wanted to communicate with Lin Yu. But he also discovered that the power in this magic book disappeared quickly. In other words, it is impossible for Lin Yu to help him now. He also dripped his own head. He also said to Modu here, "Haven't you personally seen my strength? So what are you struggling with here? You and I actually don't need to compete at all." When he said this, Modu shook his head. "Whether you want to discuss it or not, it doesn't depend on Bono, but on yourself. If he is not willing to compete now, he will leave. But if Bono is willing, he will fight quietly." Now he also told Bono truthfully about this problem. This Bono also let out a long sigh. "It seems that today, I can escape the first day of the new year, but I can't escape the 15th day. He was also sonorous and powerful, and he hooked Modu. He wanted to see how powerful Modu was now. Why do you dare to release such a high-sounding side in front of him? At the moment, Bono and Modo in front of them also quickly occupied the front and back positions. The 2 of them are also preparing to fight here. But Lin Yu also left here straightforwardly. He was also looking at these 2 people in the sky. He believed that Bono would never make a mistake. Because I have already helped Bono. Moreover, I have already told him some things in the magic book. The most important thing is that he also returned a certain amount of power. Now he just needs someone to help him. He can transform into a human form. However, this also depends on the completion of the discussion between these 2 people." Bono's approach. Now Bono also used some of the power in the magic book to rush towards Modo. "Since you are fighting with me now, then I will definitely do my best." At this time, Modu was also extremely confused. He never expected it. Bono would attack him so suddenly. He was also here, directly exuding the most tyrannical power in his body at an extremely fast speed. After he released these powers, he also poured all his magic into Bono's body. However, the domineering energy in his body was also extremely low. Because the battle just now had unleashed all the power in his body. On Bono's side, also felt that Modo didn't have much ability, let alone much power. Here he was, also shaking his head. He believed that he did not have to fight Modo at all. In such a battle, there is no way to tell the winner. After he finished speaking, he looked at Modo expectantly. I hope he will stop. Modo here also refused such a request. Even if he fails today, he must fight here too. After all, he has gone through a war, and Bono has also gone through a war. Therefore, the two of them also complement each other. No one needs to talk about anyone now. Bono also lowered his head silently. Lin Yu also discovered in the sky that the two of them were actually communicating here. What he hopes most now is for these two people to fight. Because once these two people start a war, on my side, I just sit back and reap the benefits. And Lin Yu could also see that these two people would never fight here. They are just exchanging ideas and will not kill each other. At the moment, Modo in front was also here, feeling the turbulent power in Bono's body. However, this power is also the power of the thunder and lightning. Although the breath and power they possess are very huge, but they cannot resist the power of this natural disaster. No one knows when this natural power will be released. This power of the thunder and lightning also struck Bono and Modo. The two of them also dodge each other. However, the two of them are also attacking. It can be said that even during the dodge time, the attack must be completed. From here we can see how powerful these two people are. At this moment, Lin Yu in front of him was also silently here, feeling the power of the thunder and lightning. He thought that he could use the power of the thunder and lightning to quickly transmit the power in his body. By that time, will I be able to transform into a human form? All Lin Yu wants to do now is to turn into a human form. He also knew that this was a rather harsh matter. But he has to do it even if it's harsh. At this moment, Modo and Bono were fighting together again. However, there should be no winner in the competition between the two of them. Now Bono can't admit defeat. Once Bono loses, he will suffer inhuman treatment. Moreover, Modo would also spread rumors about his low strength outside. Once this rumor is true, then on my side, I feel like crying without tears. He was also here quietly, speaking to Lin Yu in front of him. On your side, can you use some of the secrets in your book to tell me how to fight? Lin Yu directly handed over the boxing skills to Bono. As long as Bono can use boxing skills to defeat the person in front of him, then he can get certain feedback from his side. When the time comes, he will be invincible. After Lin Yu taught him the boxing skills, he also hoped that Bono could win. Bono also performed the boxing skills taught to him by Lin Yu. It was also here that he hooked his hand at Modo. Now he can completely use his ability to seriously injure Modo in front of him. At that time, he can easily win. Isn't this something that everyone is afraid of? Now Bono also discovered Du's surprise attack here. It was also after he punched. Several other boxing techniques were directly released. After releasing this series of things, Modo in front of him also felt it. Bono was so difficult to deal with. He was racking his brains here. Why can Bono pour out his power every time he attacks? Could it be that Bono is really that much more tyrannical than me? He didn't want to believe it at first. But now the real thing is before him. Even if he doesn't want to believe it, there are many people who make him believe it. He also said to Bono, "How can you take advantage of the ability that weighs 1,000 pounds?" After saying this, Bono in front of him burst into laughter. If he didn't have this magic book, he wouldn't have Lin Yu's help. He really doesn't know how. But now, he has stood at the highest point. With his own strength, he can definitely facilitate this matter. He also spoke quietly to Modo at this time. You don't need to ask so many questions about the specific reason. Even if you ask, I may not tell you. But you definitely can't beat me now. Quote. Modo didn't believe it in his heart, since he couldn't win with boxing. Then he would use some tyrannical power on his side. And he also has leg skills and sword skills. He didn't believe that he could never win. If this is the case, he will have to think deeply about it here. What is the difference between you and Bono? Now Bono also condensed his fist into a snake-shaped fist move again. It was also here that it rushed forward like a python and hit Modu on the chest. Every time he punched out, Modu would spit out a trace of blood. And this trace of blood also caused Modu to suffer moderate injuries. Modu is here after scratching his head. He was here too, breathing heavily from his mouth. It seems that Bono is not so easy to compete with. At this moment, Bono didn't want to be nagging anymore. He wanted to resolve this battle easily. He also punched hard. It also knocked Modu upside down and flew away. Now Modu used his hands to grasp the ground tightly. He immediately backed up 5 meters and stopped here. If he didn't grab the ground, he might really be blown away dozens of meters away. He also showed a fierce look. But at this moment, Modu finally surrendered to Shinue. Because he felt that no matter how he dealt with it, he could not defeat Bono and Bono in front of him. Then why don't you admit defeat? If you keep fighting, it won't do you any good. Here he was, silently speaking to the Bono in front of him. I admit today that I can't beat you. Bono wanted him to admit it early on. But it was very difficult for him to admit it before. Because on his side, he never thought that he would lose to himself. But at this time, Bono also stretched out his hands. Even if he defeated Mordo, there was no such excitement in his heart as if he was eager to try. Because he and Modu were still relatively good friends after all. Even if they weren't friends, the two of them didn't have any connection. At the moment, Bono also said to Modo, "Anyway, today's discussion is just a discussion. If you have time, you and I can have a few drinks together. If there is no time, we can leave now. Because I still have some things to deal with here." Quote. Modu also knew that Bono had issued an eviction order. I just don't want to see myself. Here he is, after racking his brains. I also thought hard about it for a long time. He also bowed his hands to Bono in front of him. He knew that he was not injured today, and that was also because of Bono. He also left bluntly. Bono easily won this sparring match. He also felt that the power in his body was a little stronger. But now he also wants to take a look at his magic book. Most importantly, he wanted to take a look at Lin Yu. Now Bono has only one idea in his mind, which is to communicate with Lin Yu. Also ask Lin Yu what he thinks. After all, he felt that Lin Yu seemed to have some impulses recently. But what exactly are these impulses? He didn't have the nerve to ask. Here he is, quietly watching everything in front of him. He also found a very secluded place. Because now, he cannot let others know that the magic book in his hand contains Lin Yu. He also came to his own territory quietly. He also arranged an energy protection array in front of himself. He finished arranging the formation and said to Lin Yu in front, "You can come out and communicate with me now." Lin Yu also heard, after Bono's remarks. He also slowly revealed half of his head. He was also sonorous and powerful, telling Bono in front of him what kind of things he wanted to do with him. Bono is also full of questions. If you have nothing to do, can't you find Lin Yu? Can't the two of them just communicate? He was also here, quietly speaking to Lin Yu. If you have any wishes, you can tell me. Without your help, I wouldn't be able to master that black magic today. And Mordo was defeated. And Mordo has failed, being my easy husband. Then he will definitely publicize my incident to the outside world now. This is definitely the safest. But I also know that without your help, I would not be able to receive such a huge honor. Lin Yu also nodded here. He felt that the person in front of him still had a conscience. If this person says nothing, it's absolutely not okay to just express gratitude to yourself without any basis. Lin Yu would not approve it. Now Lin Yu also told Bono at the moment what his wish was. That is, he hopes that Bono can help him shape the human form. He wants to be born again. He also wanted to see what kind of strong people there were in this world. After he finished speaking, he also saw Bono's blue face. He also scratched his head. He said quietly to Bono, "Is there anything wrong with this? If you have any questions or you find it difficult, then tell me in person. On my side, I will definitely do my best to help you. After all, this is what helps shape my humanity." Quote. Now Bono is also blushing. It's not that he can't, it's not that he doesn't want to help me. It's because this matter is really too difficult. Once he helps Lin Yu, what impact will it have on him? And what exactly is needed to create a human form? Lin Yu told him the matter without saying anything now. Wouldn't this make him extremely embarrassed? Lin Yu was also laughing loudly here. He just needs Bono's power now. As long as Bono can transfer all his power to himself. He also made a human form in front of himself. And it is also made into an energy body. He can solve everything right here. After Lin Yu finished these words, Bono in front of him was also extremely embarrassed. Because his current strength is already very low. If he helps Lin Yu, wouldn't there be problems on my side? He absolutely cannot help Lin Yu now. He also spoke quietly to Lin Yu. Now I also need to restore my strength. You want me to help you now? This is impossible. It is impossible for me to channel the power within myself. And this will also cause problems with my foundation. Quote. Lin Yu also understands that this is his own business. And I also need Bono now. Therefore, Lin Yu will also lower his attitude extremely low. Now, he quietly nodded to Bono in front of him. He just asked Bono to help him if he had time. If there is no time, Lin Yu can completely wait. Bono never expected that Lin Yu could say such high-sounding words. The most important thing is that Lin Yu now also understands himself. He also gave Lin Yu a thumbs up. However, now he has completed communication with Lin Yu. But the most important thing is that his communication this time is to get some other moves from Lin Yu, as well as other things. He thinks Lin Yu must have it. He was also here quietly, speaking to Lin Yu in front of him. Do you have any other techniques and powers here? You can also teach me. Especially those boxing and kicking techniques. Quote. Lin Yu also burst out laughing after hearing this. It seemed that he was not the only one who wanted to ask Bono in front of him. It turns out that he also has something to pray for. It seems that both sides complement each other. Lin Yu was here and just waved his hand. He handed a series of things on his side to Bono in front of him. He also told Bono that as long as he devoted himself to understanding these things, he would achieve certain victory. And he can also condense all these things in front of himself. Best of all, these things can also become Bono's. After Lin Yu finished speaking, he also felt his own power and disappeared quickly. It's a book. He has not yet transformed into a human form. Then he can't always communicate with Lin Yu here unscrupulously. Therefore, he also entered the magic book quietly. Bono also received a series of boxing skills from Lin Yu. It is also here that these boxing techniques are performed and operations are performed. Also tempered. But Modu, on the other hand, was quietly looking at everyone in front of him. He has now reached an island. He also discovered that there are many people here. And these people respect themselves very much when they see it. But he knew Bono's strength. However, these powerful men in front of them also asked Modu one after another. In the competition between him and Bono, who wins and who loses? Modu also widened his eyes. Never expected it. The news about his sparring with Bono actually spread to these people. How on earth did these people know? And after knowing these things, what did they do? Didn't the news of my failure reach these people's ears? Otherwise, why are these people here asking themselves for no reason? Modu was also filled with questions. But he still nodded here and said to the people in front of him. Everyone, I have never beaten Lin Yu in front of me. After saying this, these strong men also looked at each other one after another. They thought that Bono's power would be impossible to defeat Modu in front of them. But things now are beyond their control. Could this be Modu's strength? It seems that they really think too highly of Modu. They also want to ask, why? Modu said nothing, because this matter is ultimately shameful. And he couldn't let everyone know about his failure. He was also here silently, speaking to these people. Everyone, you don't need to know the specific things. And even if you ask, I won't tell you. Quote. These words also made these people extremely embarrassed. It seems that Bono has indeed suffered serious injuries to Modu. Otherwise, how could Modu keep silent about this battle? They are here without any trouble. Because they also felt it, it was simply impossible to ask at this moment. And Modu couldn't say anything, and they left in despair. Modu also promoted in disguise Bono's recent boxing skills. And he seems to have mastered the boxing technique. Specifically how to become proficient. At this moment, Everyone was still a little confused after learning about Modu. It is also passed from 1 to 10 and to 100. Now the people who spread Bono are also very powerful. Some people believe that Bono is the reincarnation of the boxing champion. Some people believe that Bono knew boxing before. Otherwise, why would Bono have such powerful boxing skills? Therefore, Bono is now famous. Anyone can easily control Bono here. You can also spread rumors about Bono here. But Bono didn't even care. Because he now owns Lin Yu and also owns the magic book, he can occupy an invincible position. He also quietly felt the strength here, which also had certain disadvantages. He also looked surprised, but now he has almost understood Lin Yu's problem. He wanted to ask Lin Yu for something more, but he also figured it out. Once he asks Lin Yu for some skills and moves, Lin Yu will definitely ask him to make a physical body. He should finish condensing all the domineering energy in his body before talking about the rest. Once all this domineering energy was running in his body, he returned to his peak state. Only then can he help Lin Yu. Caecilius also learned about Bono's great strength. He also had a lot of unwillingness in his heart. He now has the power of darkness. Then should he use his dark power to attack others? And it is absolutely not okay to let Bono show off his power like this all the time. The most important thing is that he wants to get the magic book in Bono's hand. Once he has it, he can have the upper hand. This is what he hopes for most. Now Caecilius also quietly found his subordinates. He wanted to discuss it easily with his men. So he looked at the men in front of him at an extremely fast speed and said, "Everyone, is there any way for me to get the book against Bono?" After saying this, these people looked at each other silently. If they help Caecilius get the magic book and defeat Bono, they still have no way or strength. But they believe that Caecilius now has the power of darkness. So why not use the power of darkness to create a magician? After all, the power of darkness is blessed by the power of creation. Once he can create the magician, he can let the magician attack Bono in front of him. You can also take the magic book in this person's hand into your own hands. Moreover, Lin Yu's power should be left in the magic book, and these current subordinates also told Caecilius truthfully. But whether Caecilius can create the magician depends on his own creation. Anyway, these subordinates have already talked about the matter here. The specific direction to go has nothing to do with them. They looked at Caecilius and waved their hands, because they didn't want to stop here. They also have their own things to do. If you want to stay here all the time, it seems a bit unsatisfactory. Caecilius was also in a daze here for a moment. Because if he really creates the magician, it also has a certain impact on his own power of darkness. He may not be able to easily resist this dark power. So here he was looking at these subordinates with all the vicissitudes of life. He also discovered that all these people had left here. He already understood it so well that it seemed that these people could only provide him with opinions. It is up to you to decide exactly where to go. Now Caecilius slowly closed his eyes. He can fully exert his own power to the extreme, and he can also completely spread out all these auras of his own. He was also looking ahead here, and then he also shielded himself. He now wants to create a magician here, and then let the magician go and snatch the magic book from Bono's hand. But such a scene was known to Lin Yu. After all, Lin Yu is a magic book, so he must be familiar with ancient and modern times. Moreover, he can also exert his own power to the extreme, and he can observe every move of the world in the sky. It can be said that Lin Yu is a symbol of strength. If Lin Yu turns into a human form, he can turn the tide. But if Caecilius wants to create a magician, he also needs certain things. For example, the crystallization of black magic, or some bodies that can store energy. But these things take time to consider, and he can't find a body that can provide energy now. But he possesses the crystallization of the power of darkness. So he asked everyone to find a body that could contain the power of darkness. As long as he can find such items, he can create a magician from such items. Now Caecilius has also handed over a hot potato to everyone. However, the people in front of them also looked at each other one after another, and they were also very depressed. Even more tossing and turning here. These people now also spoke at extremely fast speeds, silently looking at Caecilius in front of them. You also said that it is quite difficult to find items that can contain the power of darkness. Since you couldn't find it yourself, why did you leave this matter to us? But Caecilius's inner thought is that I can't find it, but you must find it. Otherwise, what's the point of bringing you here? Anyway, Caecilius is just a mess right now. If these people don't help themselves, many problems will arise. Lin Yu, who was standing in front of him at this moment, also wanted to tell Bono the news. After all, he still needs to rely on Bono to help him now. Moreover, these powers in his body and the energy that he wants to transform into a human form must have Bono's help. But when he just wanted to communicate with Bono, he felt that Bono was not particularly willing to talk to him. Lin Yu also figured out what to do if he found this person. He would definitely be complained by this person, so he might as well ask Bono to come find him. In this way, you also save yourself the trouble of doing it. At this moment, Lin Yu in front of him burst into laughter. However, no one could find any trace of Lin Yu. In other words, Lin Yu is not afraid of anything at all now. At this moment, Lin Yu closed his mouth, and Caecilius' subordinates also traveled many places. Their purpose is to help Caecilius find the object that he said can contain the power of darkness. After searching for a long time, they finally found an energy crystal. This crystal is similar to infinite gems and can contain a lot of power. They didn't know whether the power of darkness could be integrated, but they also needed to bring these things to Caecilius. Let Caecilius go and see for himself. At this moment, Caecilius' men in front of him also returned to Caecilius. These men also gave everything to Caecilius. Also let him see if this energy crystal can be used. If it can be used, there will be certain harm. But now the energy crystal is infused with the power of darkness. Caecilius actually felt that this crystal had undergone a qualitative change. Caecilius also gives a thumbs up here. Because this energy crystal can contain the power of darkness, he can transform this crystal and create the magician. Only in this way can he turn the tide against Bono and obtain the magic book. He actually doesn't have to work so hard. He only needs to find a subordinate to inject his dark power into this place, and he can turn this person into a magician. However, Caecilius always feels that once this method is used, it will have a certain impact on others. And it will also make these people look down on themselves in disguise. Therefore, Caecilius does not use it like this now. He must make these people willing to surrender to him. Otherwise, wouldn't what I did make these people chill? So Caecilius would rather find a thankless thing to condense into a magician. He won't let his subordinates condense into magicians. So he now asked everyone to leave. He no longer needed the help of these people. These people now also left at an extremely fast speed. But here, at the moment, Caecilius also fully exerted his power. Seeing this crystallization of energy, a qualitative change occurred. And he transformed into the body of the great demon magician that he needed. He also slowly injected his own dark power into the energy crystal. After the injection was completed, the crystal in front of him also appeared here looming. And it seems to have its own wisdom. After all, there is a trace of spiritual wisdom in the power of darkness. There is no need to strip away the power within oneself. Now the source of the power of darkness also needs to be injected into this energy crystal. Only in this way can the magician be created. Otherwise, even with the endless power of the coast, the magician cannot create it without its origin. Caecilius knew this. He also bit his own finger and forced out the original power and threw it directly on the crystal. The created demon magician also slowly opened his eyes, and he saw Caecilius in front of him. Looking at himself here, he understood that he actually needed to help Caecilius. And this person is the one who created himself, and he will do his best to deal with this matter here. He also bowed deeply to Caecilius in front of him and pricked up his ears. He wanted to know what kind of thing Caecilius had found him. If there was something outrageous, he also hoped that Caecilius could tell him. If not, what's the point of this person creating himself? Now Caecilius also said to the magician, "Since I have created you, I want you to enter the palace Bono. I hope you can snatch the magic book from Bono's hand. Once you get the magic book, you must give it to me." Quote. After finishing speaking, Caecilius in front of him also patted this person on the shoulder. The magician was in a daze. What was this magic book? Why let yourself be robbed? And the most important thing is, can he beat Bono now? He was a little at a loss, and now he was silently asking Caecilius here. But Caecilius also wanted to let magician know how powerful he is now. Now Caecilius has also found all his men here. He wants these men to fight against the magician, the great demon he just created. Only in this way can the magician regain his confidence. Magician is also waiting quietly. These subordinates also looked at this person very quickly and then went crazy. Attack this person. Although they are also magicians, they have not yet reached the level of magicians, but now they are not afraid of anyone. Nowadays, the magician is just a wave of his hand. He poured out all the magician power and the dark power in his body. All the men in front of him were blown away by him. He widened his eyes and never thought that he had blown them away. And he can actually possess such powerful power. The current magician also has a deeper understanding of his own strength. Magician also burst out laughing here. He also wants to follow Caecilius's instructions now. See if you can take down Bono when you knock down the so-called Lin Yu. But he had no idea where these two people were. But at this time Caecilius also took out a topographic map, explaining the place where Bono and Bodu had previously discussed. Logically speaking, since the two of them were discussing each other, Bono should not have left. Since Bono never left here, then the magician can go here to see if Bono is still there. If you are there, snatch Lin Yu's magic book as well. The current big devil, magician, waved his hand immediately and left here. At the moment, Lin Yu also discovered the power of the magician, and even discovered the origin of Caecilius. He also wants to inform Bono about this now, because he is not ready to keep it secret. If he continues to lie, not only but also Bono in front of him will have certain problems. If they can't escape or die here, wouldn't it be very unacceptable? Lin Yu is also planning to let Bono help him condense his physical body. Once he dies, he will really feel like crying without tears. But at the moment, he was also shocked to find that Bono had comprehended and completed all the series of things he had given him. Moreover, all the domineering energy in his body has been condensed to its peak. In fact, if there were no problems with Caecilius and magician, we would be in trouble now. Bono can completely use the domineering energy in his body to help Lin Yu in front of him create his physical body. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.